My sister-in-law revealed my pregnancy early, so it wouldn't overshadow hers later, saying she did it because she was excited, but I'm excited to reveal the gender in her pregnancy announcement. I'm 27 and currently 8 months pregnant, and this story has been weighing on my mind for a while. I haven't talked much about it, but it's been on my mind every day. What happened was one of those things that seemed small at the time, but over time, as I thought about it more, I realized it was all wrong. My husband, Nick, 29, has a younger sister named Dana, 25. Dana has always been a bit of a bigwig, to say the least. She needs attention, loves being the center of attention, and doesn't understand boundaries very well. I don't think she's ever read the definition of that in the dictionary. She's not mean or cruel, at least not obviously, but she's one of those people who acts first and then either doesn't apologize or gives an apology that makes it all about her. Our mothers are very good friends. They grew up together. Nick and I had been trying for a baby for a little over a year. We didn't share this with anyone except a couple of close friends because the process was stressful, and we didn't want people asking us for updates. There were tears, disappointment, and a chemical pregnancy that left me feeling pretty upset for weeks. So when I finally got a positive test and the doctor confirmed everything was fine, I was cautiously happy. I wanted to enjoy the moment and tell people when I was ready. Nick completely respected that. He said we could wait until after the first trimester to tell our families. I liked that plan. It seemed safe. At that point, I was around 9 weeks along, so it was still early, but we decided to tell her parents and siblings first. Only them. It wasn't obvious yet, and I made it very clear that I wasn't ready for the news to be public. I told them over dinner at my in-laws' house. It was just their mom, dad, Dana, and Dana's boyfriend, Ben, who were there. Everyone seemed happy for us, and I felt good about how everything went. Then, 3 days later, I woke up to a phone full of notifications. I had messages from cousins, aunts, co-workers, and even a school friend I hadn't spoken to in years, congratulating me. Some people tagged me on Facebook, and others commented on a post Dana made. She'd posted a photo of a baby bodysuit and booties, and wrote something about becoming an aunt. She tagged Nick and me. I hadn't posted anything about the pregnancy at the time. I immediately called Nick, who was at work, and he hadn't seen it either. I started crying because I felt like the moment I'd been guarding so jealously had been taken away from me. I wasn't ready to share it. I was still afraid something might go wrong. And now it was there, available for everyone to comment on, message, and speculate about. I texted Dana telling her I didn't agree with what she did. She responded with a long message about how excited she was, how she couldn't contain herself, and how she thought we'd be okay with it because we'd told the family. She went on to say she was so happy and didn't think it would be a big deal. There you have an example of doing something wrong and not apologizing, and making it all about her. Nick was furious. He called her, and I could hear them having a big argument. She cried, of course, because that's what she does when people are upset with her. Then she called her mom, who called me and told me Dana did it with good intentions and that I should be happy. A lot of people were excited for us, and that's what mattered. I didn't say much, but after hanging up, I muted Dana on all my social media accounts and stopped responding to her messages. For a few weeks, I felt like I'd been robbed of that special moment. People kept asking questions, giving unsolicited advice, and commenting on my body. I didn't even get to make the sweet announcement I'd planned for my own parents. Dana's post got to me first, and when I told her she stole that moment from me, she said I was being overly dramatic. That word stayed with me, dramatic, as if I hadn't waited so long to get to this point. Fast forward a few months. I was about 6 months pregnant when Dana invited everyone to a barbecue at her house. It was just family, her parents, me and Nick, some cousins, and her boyfriend Ben's parents. We were all there, hanging out, eating, chatting. Then, Dana stood up in the middle of it all and clinked a glass, like they do at weddings. She smiled and announced she was pregnant. "I'm 7 weeks along," she said. "Ben and I are so happy and wanted to keep it a secret for a while, but we decided this was the perfect time." Everyone clapped and congratulated her. I smiled too, but I was stiff. That night, after most people had left, I asked Dana privately why she hadn't said anything sooner, and I already knew. She looked at me and told me she didn't want her pregnancy announcement to be overshadowed by mine, that I didn't want it to be something where people just talked about my pregnancy, that I wanted my own time. I felt like my brain had short-circuited. She didn't want to be overshadowed. So she kept her pregnancy a secret for weeks, and then scheduled it to get maximum attention. And she had the nerve to say I was being dramatic for wanting to wait to share mine. It all started to make sense to me. Dana didn't post about our pregnancy out of excitement. She did it because she saw an opportunity for attention and wanted to seize it. She didn't care that I wasn't ready. She saw the window of opportunity closing and jumped on it before it was gone. And then, when it was her turn, she protected her moment like it was a golden ticket. She understood boundaries perfectly when it came to her, so someone must have given her a dictionary. She just didn't think they should apply to me. From then on, everything Dana did seemed calculated. She kept posting photos of her bump with captions that felt oddly competitive. She posted a side-by-side comparison of her bump at 7 weeks versus mine at 26 weeks, joking that we were having twin cousins. People thought it was cute, but to me, it wasn't. She would show up at family dinners in dresses that showed off her barely there bump and make comments about what a fun mom she was going to be. At my baby shower, she gave me a pack of diapers and then told the entire room that she was planning a minimalist parenting style and that she wouldn't need a lot of things because she was going to keep everything natural. She made several indirect comments that felt like digs, like that she wouldn't gain much weight or that she was already planning to gain it back quickly. I didn't respond to any of that. I just nodded, smiled, and moved on, but it hurt. Even when Nick confronted her again and told her she needed to chill out, she just said we were insecure. That's their buzzword now, insecure. As if wanting space, privacy, and respect makes me insecure. It's not even about the attention. I don't care about the number of likes or posts, or being the center of family gossip. What mattered to me was not being able to enjoy my pregnancy in peace. The only person who should have been supportive, another woman going through the same thing, turned it into a strange competition. I don't even know if she realizes the damage she's caused. Probably not. Dana lives in her own little world where every moment is about her. And the worst part is that the whole family just accepts it. They say, "That's just how Dana is," as a form of justification. As if she were a baby who hit her head as a child and ended up like that. That's why people say that's how she is. Maybe that's the case, and I don't know. Maybe she's just spoiled by her parents, and no one wants to take care of the child they raised. Nick and I talked about distancing ourselves a bit. Not cutting anyone off, but creating space. I want my baby to grow up surrounded by family, but I also don't want him around people who don't respect boundaries, especially if they're going to treat life's important moments like a game. My due date is a few weeks away. Dana is around 13 weeks along now. I've already seen her list of baby names on Instagram, along with a post asking her followers what theme she should use for her gender reveal. She tagged me and said we should have a combined party. I didn't respond. I just want to have my baby and start my life as a mom without worrying about who's watching, judging, or trying to one-up me. But I have a feeling this is just the beginning for Dana. She planned a small picnic to announce her second pregnancy in the park. To reach more people. She said it wasn't formal, just a fun way to share the news with family and close friends. At first, she wasn't even going to go. She was 31 weeks pregnant, super swollen, barely sleeping, and constantly tired. But then her mom called me and said she really wanted me to go. I felt like it was one of those guilt-ridden invitations, like I'd be a bad person if I didn't go. So I went, just for an hour. What she didn't know was that I just found out the baby's gender. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even our parents. I wasn't planning a big party or anything. I didn't want another event that would be misinterpreted or steal the spotlight. But this time, I had an idea. So I baked cupcakes, vanilla ones with white frosting. Inside, it had a pink filling. I brought them in a box labeled fragile and didn't say anything else. I thought maybe some people would try one, see the color, and we'd have a sweet little surprise. I just didn't want to wait any longer to share it with the people who were there. And yes, part of me thought it would be nice for her to feel a little of what I felt when she stole the news from me. We were a little late. Everyone was already there, decorations everywhere, a photo board, matching napkins, soft music. She was dressed like she was going to a photo shoot for a maternity brand. She gave a short speech, showed her ultrasound photo, talked about how long they kept it a secret, and how good it felt to finally let it out. Everyone clapped, took photos, and said congratulations as if it were a red carpet event. After a while, she began to mingle. People were eating snacks while sitting and chatting. It felt like a normal gathering again, and that's when I started offering the cupcakes. I didn't say anything in particular, just smiled and said, "Enjoy." It didn't take long. One of the cousins bit into one, saw the pink color, and made a loud noise. She yelled it, and a couple of people looked over. Suddenly, all eyes were on the box. I smiled and nodded when someone asked if it was mine. I said, "I just found out and wanted to share it with everyone." adding that I was very excited. Everyone clapped again. Some came up to hug me. Some were confused, but smiled politely. Their mother seemed to be holding her breath. He didn't say anything. He just stood next to me, holding my water bottle, and remained silent. My sister-in-law didn't notice right away, but when she did, I could see she dropped it all at once. Her smile disappeared. Then she walked briskly, her boyfriend following her. They stood at the edge of the park for the remainder of the event. She didn't come back. We left about 30 minutes later, leaving the cupcakes on the table. Later that night, I received a long message, some parts in capital letters. She said I ruined her day, that I did it on purpose, that I was jealous and bitter, that I always made everything about myself, that I couldn't spare her a single moment, that I embarrassed her in front of her friends and stole her joy. I told her I was sorry if she felt that way, but I didn't do it to hurt her. I said I was excited, just like she said when she announced my pregnancy without asking. I told her I hoped she'd see the double standard someday. She didn't respond, just left it on read, and then blocked me on Instagram the next morning. Her mother keeps texting her husband, saying she's upset and wants an apology. His father hasn't said anything. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since the gender reveal drama. Things were awkward but calm for a while. There was no direct contact, only indirect comments through family members. Then, last week, I received a message from her mother, just to let me know that she was in the hospital for observation due to some minor pregnancy issues. It wasn't anything serious, just some bleeding and stress. The baby is fine, she's fine. But of course, that wasn't what I wanted to focus on. The next thing I knew, people started contacting me with strange accusations. Things like, "She's been under a lot of pressure lately," or "She hasn't been able to rest properly since all this happened," or "This is why women need support, not competition." Later that night, I received a long message from her boyfriend. She told me they weren't blaming anyone directly, but that the timing of everything she'd been through had been really difficult for her. She said what happened at the announcement party had really affected her. She said stress isn't good for a pregnant woman. He used vague words like emotional climate and family disharmony. Basically, he was trying to make me feel guilty without actually saying it. Honestly, it was crazy. I didn't do anything after the cupcake incident. I kept quiet. I didn't post anything about it. I didn't ask anyone to take sides. But now they're treating me like I caused a medical emergency just by showing up with pink cupcakes. Her mother started texting my mom, saying things like, "We should all be thinking about the baby's health, not egos and rivalry." Then someone else said, "Maybe you should apologize just to keep the peace, not because you were wrong, but to help everyone move forward." I'm 33 weeks pregnant, about to explode. I can barely tie my shoes, and now I'm being told I have to take the blame for something I didn't cause. At a recent family dinner, some people looked at me askance. Some didn't even speak to me. An aunt approached my husband and asked if I'd been more emotional lately, as if trying to diagnose me as unstable. Meanwhile, she stayed home and posted a photo of her hospital bracelet, captioned it, "Trying to get through all of this." All of this bothers me because I went through a lot to get pregnant, and she had no problem causing me stress. Not because of the revelation itself, but because she didn't want to tell everyone before I was further along in the pregnancy. I haven't received any messages from her. I find it ironic that some people think I should apologize, when she didn't. And she absolutely needed to apologize, because my pregnancy was high risk, and hers wasn't. If anyone put her pregnancy at risk, it's her, by turning it into a huge competition. Now, the family is planning a baby shower just for her, to lift her spirits, and they're already making comments about how everyone should be on their best behavior, and how we should avoid unnecessary surprises this time. I haven't decided if I'll go. Honestly, I just want to enjoy the last few weeks of my pregnancy in peace. But that doesn't seem possible when someone keeps acting like my mere existence is hurting them. Update 2. The baby shower invitations went out a few days ago. She used one of those fancy websites for online invitations, and sent them to everyone in the family, and a few of our mutual friends. I opened the invitation expecting the typical theme, dress code, registry link. But near the end of the invitation, there was a strange, intrusive line that said something like, "For the comfort of the expectant mother, this will be a child-free and pregnancy-free event." A pregnancy-free event at a baby shower? That didn't even make sense. I texted one of our cousins to ask if she received the same thing. She had too. I thought maybe it was a personalized invitation for me. She thought it was weird too. That cousin isn't pregnant, so she didn't think much of it, but the message was clear. She wasn't welcome. Is no one else in the family pregnant now? Obviously, it was about me. He didn't mention my name, but everyone knew. It was his way of saying he couldn't go without saying it directly. I guess she thought making a general rule would seem like a general limit rather than a personal criticism. A few hours later, her best friend posted a story about how some people just can't handle not being the center of attention, and that true queens protect their energy during special moments. She didn't mention anyone, but it was too well timed. Later that day, my mom called me and asked if I'd seen the invitation. I told her I had. I was already upset, but trying to remain neutral. He told me he'd talked to her about it, and she claimed it was due to her anxiety and wanting to stay calm. Apparently, seeing other pregnant women makes her nervous and distracts her. That was her excuse. She also told my mom she didn't want people comparing bumps or asking pressure questions. It was all about preserving her peace or something. I'm sure if she hadn't done the gender reveal, none of this would happen. More family members began contacting me privately. Some were confused, others clearly embarrassed. Some asked if I was going. I just told them I wasn't invited, and that was it. One person actually messaged the hostess asking if the rule was serious, and they confirmed it was. Apparently, it was a firm boundary to protect the guest of honor. The thing is, I wasn't even thinking about going. I didn't want to be around any more drama, but being told I couldn't go because I was pregnant affected me in a different way. As if my body was now some kind of threat to their spotlight. As if being pregnant at the same time as her was a crime. Now it's the new topic in family chats. People are whispering, wondering why she's acting like this. Some family members have quietly decided not to go. Some will go, but they think the whole thing is ridiculous. Some remain on his side and think he's just trying to protect his mental health. I've been on the sidelines. I haven't responded, commented, or posted anything. I'm focusing on getting ready for the baby, but part of me is tired of always having to swallow the insults and move on. If I had done something like that, the whole family would have dragged me in. Update 3. Last weekend, the family had brunch at my husband's aunt's house. It was a small gathering, mostly just immediate family. She was there with her husband, sitting silently. At first, I kept my distance, trying to avoid any unnecessary drama, focusing on catching up with a few people and getting something decent to eat, while balancing my very pregnant body on a too small chair. Everything was going well until one of the cousins mentioned a parenting support group she'd recently joined and how helpful it had been. Somehow, that turned into a conversation about postpartum support and how important it is to support new mothers. Then, someone mentioned how some people in the family hadn't been very empathetic lately. It wasn't directed at anyone in particular, but the mood quickly changed. She rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath. I didn't hear what she said, but someone else did. He asked her to repeat it, and that's when things started to get heated. She immediately got defensive. She said she was tired of being painted as the villain, that everyone always coddled me and acted like I never did anything wrong. She claimed she had to deal with so much stress because people didn't let her have her moment. Some people looked uncomfortable. A couple tried to change the subject, but others wouldn't let it go. They looked at her and told her she needed to stop acting like her pregnancy was the whole world, that everyone had tried to be kind and understanding, even when she was being passive-aggressive, shutting people out, and making everything about her. It was what many of us had been thinking, but were too polite to say so. They said it wasn't normal to forbid another pregnant woman from going to a baby shower, especially your own family, just to make you feel more special. That dropping innuendos online, twisting the narrative, and turning every event into a competition rather than a celebration was not only petty, but cruel. And then, most brutally, that his behavior was rooted in jealousy, and everyone could see it. I didn't say a word. She looked completely shocked, as if no one had ever said no to her in her life. Her boyfriend seemed uncomfortable, but didn't defend her. Some people nodded silently. One of her uncles tried to calm things down, saying everyone was tired and emotional, but it didn't work. She ended up leaving early. She didn't say goodbye or make a polite excuse. She just grabbed her purse and stormed out, followed by her boyfriend. After she left, the energy in the room changed. A couple of people came up to me afterward and told me they were glad someone was finally saying something, that they'd noticed how she'd been treating me and didn't think it was right. I just nodded and thanked them. I didn't want to fuel the fire any further. Later that night, she posted about how some people can't handle seeing others happy, and how some family members were snakes in disguise. It got a few likes and supportive comments from her usual circle, but most of the family ignored it. Since then, she hasn't communicated directly with anyone. My mom said she's probably still angry and trying to act like she was attacked. I haven't spoken to her. I don't plan to anytime soon. I'm busy preparing for the baby. And honestly, it gave me some satisfaction to see someone finally call her out on her behavior after months of weird play and silent comments. Update 4. It's been almost 3 full months since I last posted, but you'll excuse me because I've been busy being a mom. My daughter was born strong and healthy, and that's all I've been thinking about these past few months. All the drama, my sister-in-law's nonsense, and the things that happened during this time have been put on the back burner. My mind was in mom mode, and my sister-in-law has been in the background, or even further back. But believe me, my sister-in-law has still done some stupid things. She hasn't given birth yet, so she still has time for her usual emotional tantrums and cries for attention. Although she's calming down as she reaches the end of her pregnancy and becomes more swollen. At least she's stopped posting photos or things, perhaps because she looks enormous and it's no longer cool to do so. But before she could calm down, she did the gender reveal, a highly produced video to show it was going to be a boy. And she even used this as a form of competition, because she emphasized in her post that she was giving her mother a grandson, as if to say that being a boy was more important than my daughter. Another great idea she had was to practice sports like boxing and the like while heavily pregnant, to show that women can be mothers and do many things at once. That may be true, but don't start doing strenuous physical activity in your 3rd trimester when you've never done any of that before. My sister-in-law has been keeping busy, trying to be the center of attention, and I've been keeping busy, trying to be the best mother I can be. Different concerns, different approaches, different goals. Update 5. I said, it's time to relax and get on with my life. Maybe forget about posting on Reddit anymore, because my daughter is already born, and once my sister-in-law's baby is, there won't be any more drama. No one told me there would be more drama when my sister-in-law's baby was born. But this drama is the good kind, the kind that doesn't involve me, and I can watch from afar. I know you're going to need some context for this, because otherwise it wouldn't make much sense. My sister-in-law has a Caucasian skin tone, but her boyfriend, Ben, doesn't. I don't know why they never got married, not even when they were about to have a child, but they lived together. Ben expected his child to be born with a skin tone somewhere between them, but the baby was born even lighter than my sister-in-law's. Well, it's not hard. The baby hasn't had time to get as much sun as she has. I don't know if it's possible that Ben could still be the father of that baby, but at least it made him suspicious. This led Ben to ask for a paternity test, as it seemed odd to him, and the result, and the origin of all the drama, is that the baby isn't his. And Ben not only kicked her out of the house, now my sister-in-law is living with his parents, but he made a post tagging her. And unlike my sister-in-law's passive-aggressive posts, where she didn't name names or only suggested certain things, this post was aggressive. He said my sister-in-law was a cheating bitch who had cheated on him with some white guy, and other things I think are highly objectionable on Reddit. He called her racist for trying to have a child with a man with the same skin color as her, and several other things. What I found weirdest of all was seeing family members liking his post. It wasn't a post like, "We decided to end our relationship after years of happiness to go our separate ways, but we plan to have a cordial relationship from now on, maybe maintain a friendship." It was more like, "My wife cheated on me with a Nazi, so fuck her." But yes, it's been a lot of drama for my sister-in-law and my husband's family. My husband just said, "I'm tired of this shit," and blocked his sister on social media. I've kept my distance. I don't want to get sucked into the vortex of drama surrounding my sister-in-law. Anyway, sometimes I think and say, "There's your attention, bitch," and that makes me smile. My sister stole my wedding dress out of my closet for her daughter to wear to her prom. But I don't know why she wanted it when she doesn't even have a daughter now. For context, I was supposed to get married next month to my fiancé, but we had to postpone it because his father was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 3 months ago. Doctors gave him about 6 to 8 months to live. Yesterday, we and I decided to postpone our wedding until his father is well enough to attend, or if things worsen, to spend as much time with him as possible. It wasn't a question for us. Family comes first. We could have gotten married sooner, but my father-in-law's condition worsened rapidly. I work in event planning, and over the years I've collected several formal dresses for different occasions. I keep them all in my closet, each in a garment bag for protection. My wedding dress is in a special white bag with gold lettering that says, "Bride's Dream." It's pretty obvious it's a wedding dress bag. Last week, Clarissa called me to ask if she could borrow one of my dresses for her prom, which is this weekend. Apparently my sister Jenny had been putting off taking her shopping, and now they were running out of time. I told him, of course, he could borrow one, and to come by Tuesday afternoon to see what I had. On Tuesday, Jenny and Clarissa arrived while I was in the middle of an important call with a client. The call had already lasted 20 minutes longer than expected, and I couldn't finish it. I signaled them to come up to my room and find a dress that would fit them. I trusted them completely. They've come to my house many times, and I've never had any problems with them. When the call finally ended about 30 minutes later, I went to the kitchen to get some water. It was then that I noticed my cat had somehow knocked over a 3-kilogram bag of flour that was on the table. There was flour everywhere, on the countertops, all over the floor, and paw prints all over the kitchen. While I was still trying to clean up the mess, Jenny and Clarissa came downstairs. Clarissa was holding a black garment bag, and they told me they'd found a dress. I was so busy with the flour mess that I didn't walk them out, so I just told them I'd see them at the dance for the pictures. They left, and I spent the next hour cleaning the kitchen. After finishing up the flour mess, I went upstairs to see which dress Clarissa had chosen. I walked into my closet and immediately noticed something wasn't right with my wedding dress bag. It wasn't completely closed. I opened it and saw that my wedding dress was gone. I frantically searched my closet, thinking maybe it had been moved, but then I realized what had happened. They'd taken my wedding dress and put it in a black bag to hide the fact they were carrying it. I was furious. I called Jenny immediately, but she didn't answer. I sent her a text message, but she didn't respond. Without a second thought, I grabbed the keys and drove to her house, which was about 20 minutes away. When I arrived, I knocked on the door. Jenny answered, surprised to see me. I asked to see the dress Clarissa had taken. Jenny hesitated, but called Clarissa to come down. When I saw Clarissa wearing my wedding dress, I nearly lost my mind. I told them it was my wedding dress, and I couldn't wear it. At first, they tried to act like they didn't know it was my wedding dress, but that was nonsense because Jenny was with me when I bought it and during the fittings. When they realized I wasn't believing their lie, they changed their story. Jenny said it was the only dress Clarissa liked, and that they didn't think it was a big deal since the wedding had been postponed anyway. Jenny also stated that it didn't really look like a wedding dress. It is, though not in the traditional sense, a champagne-colored gown with a lace corset and layers of tulle. The bag is a big clue though. They also said they would have returned it right after the dance. I was so angry I couldn't even speak. I just held out my hand and waited for Clarissa to give me back my dress. Clarissa started crying and screaming that I was ruining her dance. She said she'd already told her date about her dress colors and had called the florist for a matching color. I thought it was strange because they'd only taken the dress an hour before she arrived at her house. How did she have time to do all that? It made me think this was all planned before they even came to my house. I grabbed my dress and left without another word. When I got home, Jenny started texting me every single message she could think of, telling me Clarissa was so upset she didn't even want to go to the dance. Part of me wondered if I should have explicitly told them not to take the wedding dress. But come on, it was in a bag with Bridal Dream written on it. It should have been obvious it was off limits. I've been trying to gather my thoughts to talk to Jenny, but I'm still too angry. What makes this whole situation even more frustrating is that I was planning to be at Clarissa's pre-prom shoot this weekend. I realize now that if I hadn't discovered the missing dress until then, I would have been in the awkward position of either causing a scene at the pre-prom or letting them get away with it. I texted both of them telling them I didn't appreciate what they did, and that neither of them was welcome in my home, nor could they borrow anything until they sincerely apologized. I then called Air and told him what had happened. He was furious too, especially because he would have seen the dress before our wedding if they had gone through with their plan, and he's a bit superstitious. Air and I jointly decided that Jenny would no longer be invited to our wedding. She has a history of inappropriate behavior at family events, like the time she wore a white lace dress to my brother's wedding. We don't need that kind of drama on our day. That same night, I received a text from Clarissa asking to talk alone without her mother. The next day, we arranged to meet for coffee at my house in the afternoon. I was cautiously hopeful that he wanted to make amends, but I was also prepared to stand my ground if this was just another attempt to get me to lend him a dress. For some context, Jenny has always been what I would call entitled. She became pregnant with Clarissa after a one-night stand when she was 24, and the father wasn't present. She raised Clarissa as a single mother, going through a series of boyfriends who never stayed long-term. Jenny has told me before that she feels Clarissa stole her youth, which is a terrible thing to say about your child. Jenny seems to think the world owes her something for having had a difficult life. I respect the challenge of raising a child alone. It's not easy, but over the years, she's become increasingly resentful of anyone who seems to have an easier life than her, including me. As for Clarissa, I've always tried to be there for her. We spend time together, and I try to be someone she can talk to. She's usually quiet and polite with me, which is why her outburst about the dress surprised me so much. I decided not to contact her first because I felt she needed to learn that actions have consequences, and I wasn't going to indulge her, but I was willing to listen when she approached me. Now we'll meet to talk, and I'll let you know how it went. Update 1. It's been 3 days since the dress incident. Clarissa came to my house as planned, and she opened my eyes. Clarissa arrived around 1 p.m., dropped off by a friend. I didn't know what to expect from all this, as I told you earlier. As a precaution, I had locked the door to my bedroom, where my wedding dress was now safely stored in the closet. I couldn't even sit down before Clarissa began to apologize. She admitted that she had been wrong to make a scene, and said that she shouldn't have reacted that way. I still suspected this might be an attempt to get me to lend her another dress, but I invited her to sit at the dining room table so we could talk. But that wasn't what Clarissa wanted to tell me privately. Apparently, Jenny had been putting off buying the prom dress for weeks. First, she told Clarissa that there was no point in buying a dress if she didn't have a date for the dance. Clarissa explained that her date, a boy from school, had waited until last week to officially ask her out, even though they had already agreed months earlier to go together. Jenny had made this rule that Clarissa couldn't buy a dress until she had an official date, because there was no point in going to the dance as a single woman. Once the guy officially asked her, Jenny claimed she was too busy to take her dress shopping. It was then that Jenny suggested they call me to borrow one of my dresses. Clarissa was upset about not being able to go dress shopping for her own dress, not even with friends, but she agreed to the plan to avoid a fight with her mother. This already painted a different picture than what I had initially assumed. When they came to my house, while I was on the call with a client, Clarissa said she was trying on dresses while Jenny took dresses out of my closet. The logistics of my bedroom layout are important here. My dresses are stored in the closet, but the full-length mirror is in the bedroom near the window. Clarissa was busy trying on the dresses and evaluating them in the mirror, while Jenny rummaged through my closet. According to Clarissa, Jenny came out with my wedding dress and showed it to her. Clarissa claimed she didn't immediately recognize it as my wedding dress. Now, this part is believable because my dress isn't a traditional white gown. From a distance, it might not look like a wedding dress to someone who's never seen it before. Clarissa admitted that she had a slight doubt in her mind that it might be a wedding dress, but said she never thought her mother would pull out my wedding dress for her to try on. She also saw the white bridal bag stored in the closet and assumed that was where my real wedding dress was stored, not realizing it had been removed from that bag. They packed the dress in one of the black garment bags that had been discarded in my closet. Then, on the way back home, Jenny insisted that Clarissa immediately call the florist to order a doll to match the dress. Jenny's excuse was that florists are busy during prom season and needed to place the order immediately. This confirmed my suspicion that Jenny had planned all of this. She manipulated the situation and used her daughter as a pawn. Clarissa told me she only realized it was my wedding dress when I came to her house demanding it back. She was confused and upset, which led her to vent her anger at me. She thought I was simply arguing with her mother about taking a dress that looked like a wedding dress, not that they had taken my specific wedding dress, since she thought the real one was still in the white bag. After I left with the dress, Clarissa and Jenny had a huge argument. Jenny blamed Clarissa for ruining her own dance by making a scene and not playing along with her. Clarissa ended up crying in her room for most of the afternoon. As Clarissa told me this story, I could tell she truly felt remorseful and had been misled about many aspects of the situation. But I also made it clear to her that, regardless of her mother's manipulation, she was still wrong for blaming me for ruining her dance and yelling, instead of having a rational conversation. She didn't think to ask if the dress was special, especially given her slight hesitation. I told Clarissa I was disappointed by her reaction, but that it still mattered to me. I made it clear that the main problem was her mother's behavior, but that Clarissa still had to learn from this experience. I also emphasized that I wouldn't be lending her anything for a while, and that she wouldn't have access to my closet for at least a few months. Clarissa said she completely understood, and even commented that if any of her friends had done something similar, she wouldn't have even agreed to talk to them the way I had with her. This showed me that she understood the seriousness of the situation. Clarissa was still visibly shaken, partly from frustration. It was clear Jenny wasn't going to take her prom dress shopping now, and the event was only a few days away. After thinking about it, I decided to extend an olive branch. I would take her dress shopping myself. We went to a mall that afternoon, and Clarissa found a beautiful midnight blue dress that fit her perfectly. Plus, it matched the flower preferences she'd already given the florist. However, I made it clear that this wasn't a gift. I offered to pay for the dress as a loan with specific conditions. Clarissa would have to return 75% of the cost to me before my rescheduled wedding. She would pay me a quarter of her monthly salary from her part-time job until everything was paid. She would also help with all the floral arrangements for my wedding, since I'm doing them myself. Clarissa happily agreed to these terms, and we ended up spending a pleasant afternoon shopping and talking. I also told her that although her mother was no longer invited to my wedding, she was still welcome. I explained that her help with the floral arrangements would not only give me extra hands, but would also provide her with some constructive time away from her mother. Clarissa mentioned that she'll be starting college in the city this summer, which I think will be good for her. The distance from her mother will give her some freedom and space to grow and become her own person. As for Jenny, I haven't heard directly from her, but according to what Clarissa told me, she's still angry and blaming me. I intend to stay away from her for the foreseeable future. Update 2. I hope you'd like an update on my story, as a lot has happened in 3 weeks. First, Clarissa went to her prom in the midnight blue dress we bought, and from the photos I've seen, she looked beautiful. I wasn't at the pre-prom shoot as originally planned. Clarissa told me that Jenny made a big deal about me not being welcome after what happened. That was fine with me, since I wasn't looking forward to seeing Jenny either. Clarissa has been coming to my house twice a week to practice arranging flowers for the wedding. She's actually quite talented at this, and we've gotten along very well. This has given us time to talk more openly about her relationship with her mother. According to Clarissa, Jenny has begun telling family members a completely different version of what happened. She's saying I overreacted over a simple dress, and that I'm trying to push Clarissa away from her. She's also been saying that I'm jealous of the mother-daughter relationship, and that's why I spend so much time with Clarissa. None of this is true. Of course, I've been careful not to speak badly about Jenny to Clarissa, despite how I feel about her. I simply listen when Clarissa wants to talk and offer advice when she asks. Last week, things took an unexpected turn. Jenny showed up at my house unannounced while Clarissa was there working on the flower arrangements. She started banging on the door, demanding to speak to Clarissa. When I opened the door, I knew Jenny had been drinking. She pushed me into the house and started yelling at Clarissa for betraying her by spending time with me, because she claimed she sacrificed so much of her life to raise her, and this was how she repaid her. I asked Jenny to leave, telling her she wasn't welcome in my house, especially with that smell of alcohol, until she apologized for taking my wedding dress. This enraged her even more. She started yelling about how I was trying to steal her daughter, and how I always had to have everything perfect in my life while she struggled. When I remained calm and again asked her to leave, she knocked over one of the flower arrangements Clarissa and I were working on. At that point, I told her that if she didn't leave immediately, I would call the police. Clarissa was crying, begging her mother to stop. Finally, Jenny stormed off, but not before warning Clarissa that there would be consequences when she got home. I was worried for Clarissa's safety, so I offered to let her stay with me for a few days. She agreed, and we went to her house when we knew Jenny would be at work to pick up some of her things. When we arrived at her house, we discovered that Jenny had cut up her blue prom dress in a fit of rage. Clarissa was devastated, not only by the dress, but by the realization of how vindictive her mother could be. I had already worn the dress, but it was a lovely dress that I could have worn to my wedding or another event. She gathered what I needed for school and work, and we returned to my house. She came over last night, and after discussing the situation, we agreed that Clarissa could stay with us until she moves into her college dorm in 6 weeks. Air's father's health condition has improved somewhat with the new treatment he's receiving, so we're cautiously optimistic. We've rescheduled our wedding for the fall, hoping he'll be well enough to attend. I called my parents to let them know what was happening with Clarissa staying with us. My mom wasn't surprised by Jenny's behavior. They know how Jenny can be, but the family has generally ignored her or made excuses for her because she's a single mother. Jenny has been constantly texting and calling Clarissa, telling her the things she said when she came here or asking her to come back. It's clear to me that Jenny has serious issues she needs to resolve, but she doesn't seem to be taking the right steps to resolve them. Despite all this drama, Clarissa has been keeping up with her studies, her part-time job, and her commitment to helping with the floral arrangements for my wedding. She's also been sending me money from her paycheck, as agreed, for the dress, even though Jenny destroyed it. I told her she didn't need to pay me back, but she insists. She says it's a matter of principle and keeping her word. I'm proud of how Clarissa is handling all of this, and I hope her mother's behavior doesn't hurt her too much. Update 3. It's been almost 2 months since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have progressed. Clarissa moved into her college dorm 3 weeks ago, and the transition has been good for her. I think the change has been helpful in the sense that it's helped her decompress from being here. He still comes in once a week to work on wedding preparations, and our relationship has grown stronger through all of this. Jenny finally reached out to me directly about a month ago. She wanted to meet for coffee and clear the air. I agreed, hoping she'd be ready to apologize and make amends. Unfortunately, that wasn't what happened. When we met, Jenny spent the first 20 minutes explaining why she was justified in taking my wedding dress for Clarissa. It was a rehearsed monologue about why she was right and the universe was wrong. Her reasoning was that since the wedding had been postponed indefinitely, it wasn't a big deal. She even went so far as to say that if the wedding did happen, I might gain weight, and it wouldn't be useful to me anymore, so I probably wouldn't need it in the future. That was a big misstep for her. Now we have an October date. The dress is just there, and I'll be able to wear it. I listened to her entire speech without interrupting her. When she finished, I simply asked if she had come to apologize. She looked surprised and said she thought I would be the one to apologize for overreacting and for having pushed Clarissa away from her. At that moment, I realized I wasn't going to be able to reach an understanding with her. I told her I was disappointed that, after all this time, she still couldn't admit that taking my wedding dress without permission was wrong. Among other things, I told her that I hadn't taken Clarissa away from her, that Jenny had done that on her own after seeing the kind of mother I had. As for yesterday's father, his condition has improved significantly with the new treatment. The doctors are cautiously optimistic that he will be able to attend our wedding in October. Yesterday and I are delighted, and we have resumed planning with renewed enthusiasm. Clarissa has been a tremendous help with the wedding preparations. She's finished all the bouquets and flowers, and now we're working on the centerpieces. She has a real talent for floral design, and I've encouraged her to consider this as a possible career option. He's also paid more than half of what he owed me for the prom dress, even though I've told him several times that he doesn't need to. The rest of my family has had mixed reactions to everything that's happened. My parents support my decision to distance myself from Jenny, but they're still trying to maintain a relationship with her. My brother, who experienced Jenny's inappropriate behavior at his own wedding, is firmly on my side and has also limited his contact with her. Jenny continues to contact Clarissa regularly, alternating between blaming her and apologizing. Clarissa has set some boundaries with her mother, taking calls only once a week. It's been difficult for Clarissa, but she recognizes that her mother's behavior is toxic and that she needs to protect herself. As for me, I've decided to keep Jenny out of my life for the foreseeable future. I won't invite her to my wedding or any other important events. In hindsight, the dress incident ended up being a catalyst for some necessary changes in our family dynamic. Clarissa is flourishing in her newfound independence, and I look forward to celebrating my wedding with the people who truly support and care about me. Update 4. I consider this my final update, although life always throws new things your way. But I consider it a finale because in these past few months I got married, and life moved on away from Jenny. Yes, to start the update, I can now say I'm married. The wedding was a dream, thanks in large part to Clarissa's floral arrangements. People praised them, and Clarissa was very proud of her work. She doesn't plan to pursue a career related to this, but I think she'll eventually do well in whatever she pursues. You know, they always say that how you do the little things is how you'll do the rest, and I think Clarissa has that level of attention to detail and perseverance that will allow her to succeed in other areas. And yes, she's finished paying for her dress. That was something personal to her. When she gave me the last bit of money, she said something that will stay with me forever. It shows I'm not like my mother. I didn't pay for the dress, but rather to show that I'm a better person. Yesterday's father attended the wedding, but he sat through the entire thing. But given his condition, it was understandable. A month and a half after the wedding, he passed away, and it was devastating for yesterday. Hell, it was devastating for me too. My father-in-law had been someone I loved very much, and just seeing the pain yesterday broke my heart. One day, he was alone in the kitchen last night after dinner, drinking a glass of water, and I walked in. He wasn't happy, but he was better than I'd seen him in a long time. He said he loved thinking about being able to marry his father at the wedding, that it made all the difference. I hugged him and couldn't stop crying for 20 minutes. Since that day, I see him better, and that makes me better. It's heartbreaking to see the suffering of someone you love. There's not much to say about Jenny. She wasn't invited to the wedding, and I didn't gain weight so the dress wouldn't fit me like she said. She's also stopped bothering Clarissa with her messages and attempts to contact her, and from what I know, Clarissa is happy with that. I know what it's like to live with someone like Jenny. Even though she's not my mother, I've shared her as a sister for a long time. So I know how liberating it can be to get away from that. I don't know what Clarissa will do from now on. Perhaps this new reality is intoxicating for her, and she doesn't want to go back. Or perhaps this distance will help Ginny realize what she did and undergo a transformation. I don't know, that's something they'll have to work on. For my part, I like Ginny's free lifestyle. I want to say goodbye and thank you for all the comments you've made. My sister reconnected with our parents after they abandoned her, and she forbade me from going to her baby shower, but her husband invited me so I could tell the whole truth. When I was 18, my mom and dad packed up and left. They'd always been somewhat unstable, but I didn't think they'd go this far. I had just graduated, was working full-time at a grocery store, and they left me and my 12-year-old sister, Anna, at home with almost nothing. They told her they were going to settle in and would tell us where they were so we could go with them later, but that never happened. At first, I thought about calling Child Protective Services or trying to get help through an official channel, but I knew how that would end. They'd separate us, Anna would probably be taken to foster care, and God knows what would happen to her. So I made a decision. I stayed. I picked up extra shifts and dropped out of the community college I was planning to attend. My life became work and making sure Anna was okay. That was it. It wasn't easy, and I'm not trying to make myself out to be some kind of saint. There were times when I felt resentful, tired, angry, especially watching people our age living normal lives, while I tried to figure out how to pay for food and the things a girl needs in school. But I did it. I kept a roof over our heads. I gave up a lot of things so Anna wouldn't have to. I helped her finish school, apply to college, co-sign loans, and helped her move into her dorm. I wasn't just her big sister. I was a kind of mother to her. When she graduated and moved into her own place, I thought maybe we'd start being just sisters again. That maybe the worst was over. And for a while, it was okay. We remained close. I never held my sacrifices against him or made him feel like he owed me anything. I just wanted him to live the life I couldn't. Now Anna is an adult. She's got a job. She's in a relationship with a man, and she's about 6 months pregnant. A couple of months ago, we were talking about the baby shower. I was helping her plan it. Then she started withdrawing, not answering messages, canceling meetings. I thought she was overwhelmed, tired, or just the stress of everything. I don't know, but something wasn't right. It turns out she reconnected with our parents. I didn't even hear it from her. I found out from a cousin who saw them all together at a branch. I confronted Anna, and she admitted it was true. She said they'd been in touch, and that she wanted to give them a chance, that she wanted to start over and let them be a part of the baby's life. I told her she could do whatever she wanted, but that she needed to be careful, and she told me I was being negative and stuck in the past. Then she told me I wasn't invited to the baby shower anymore because it was going to be a positive family event, and she didn't want any drama. I don't think I'd ever felt that kind of betrayal before. I raised this girl. I gave up everything to make sure she didn't have to sacrifice her life like I did. And now she cares little about this and disinvites me like it's nothing. I think the reason is that she doesn't want to tell people the truth, that her parents abandoned her and her older sister, and that I stepped in and became a mom for 6 years while they did whatever they were doing. No, she lets them act like they've always been in her life, like they've supported her. It would have been one thing if she had said she wanted to give them a chance and forgive them. That's their decision, not mine. I know I don't want to do that, but I'm not going to force her. However, leaving me at the first opportunity because they came back is a betrayal. I worked 2 jobs, so she could stay in her dorm and not come back to a freezing apartment with no food. I took out loans just to cover her textbooks for 1 semester. And now these 2 so-called parents are acting like they've done something. I contacted her again and told her this was crossing a line. She basically told me that if I really cared about her, I should let her have this moment and not bring up the past, that it wasn't about me. And I guess that's what really bothers me, realizing that she only saw me as a ticket to a good life. But now that she has it, that she's in a stable relationship and a baby on the way, she doesn't need me anymore. I never expected a big reward or recognition, but I didn't think she'd erase me. I didn't think they'd treat me like a bitter ex-relative just trying to cause trouble. She used to call me when she was having a bad day. Now she doesn't even tell people I exist. I even heard someone at her work ask if she had any siblings, and she said no. The final straw for me was hearing that our parents are now taking credit for raising us, telling people they made some mistakes, but ultimately made it through with us. I can't stay with that. I can't pretend it didn't happen. And if Anna is going to let them feed a lie to create an image they think is better than the real one, then I don't care anymore. I haven't contacted her again, but I'm seriously considering sending a message to her boyfriend, Elian. I think he'd at least listen. Maybe he doesn't even know the real story. I'm not trying to destroy his life or sabotage his relationship, but I think he deserves to know what kind of family he's getting into. And honestly, I want at least one person in that circle to know the truth. So, would I be a horrible person if I told him? Update 1. I ended up texting Elian, Anna's boyfriend, for those who don't know yet. I didn't want to drag him into something that wasn't his, but at the same time, I felt like he deserved to know who these people really were before they were given the good parents version. So I just texted him and asked if we could meet for coffee. I told him it was about family matters. He didn't ask too many questions, just said, sure, tell me the place and time. We met the next day. I told him everything, including how they didn't even say goodbye to Anna. They just left a note and left. I still have the note, by the way. It's vague and full of nonsense like, we'll come back when things are resolved. Things were never resolved, or they resolved that we weren't important in their lives. When I finished, he said he had a feeling something wasn't right. According to him, Anna had told him our parents had always been in the background, just too busy to be constantly present, that they were going through financial difficulties, but kept in touch, that they supported her however they could. It was such a strange thing to hear. Honestly, I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I didn't even know I'd rewritten it so much. And Elian could see I wasn't really laughing. He just said something like, I figured there was more to it than that. He said he appreciated my honesty, and that he wasn't going to start a fight or anything, just talk to Anna. I told him that's all I wanted. I didn't need him to fix it, just to know what really happened. Anna showed up at my house 2 days later. I knew from the second I saw her face that it wasn't going to be a friendly visit. I was furious. He told me I was trying to sabotage his family, that I always wanted him to hate our parents. He said I was manipulative and playing the victim to gain sympathy, that he needed everyone to see me as a savior to feel better about his life. I only asked him one thing. Why was he letting people believe things that weren't true? His response, they want to be a part of my life, and I want to have real parents. It's not that I really consider myself her mother, but I acted like one and sacrificed like one, even though I didn't need to. It's impossible to know, but sometimes I think, with everything going on, what would have happened if I had called Child Protective Services? She said maybe I needed therapy. I told her maybe she needed a reality check. Eventually, she stormed off. I wasn't going to stop her. After she left, I kept thinking about what she said to me, about me having a savior complex, about controlling her. And I'll be honest, it made me doubt because honestly, yes, I was strict as a teenager. I was a kid trying to act like a mother, and I probably overcorrected. She didn't go out to parties or anything, but I was strict with her about grades, assignments, about staying safe because I was afraid of losing her too. I didn't have any role models. Our parents were never really present, even before they left. And when they left, I just improvised. I never asked to be his mother. I simply didn't see any other option. And maybe I made some decisions that were more out of fear than love. But I was always there for her, and I don't think being permissive would have helped either. I think it would be worse now. If she has an education and a good life, it's thanks to her efforts and mine, but she seems to forget that last part. I also keep thinking about Elian, about what he must be thinking now that he knows both sides of the story. I haven't heard from him since Anna came, but I wouldn't blame him if he's handling it carefully. I know I made mistakes, but I was there when it mattered. When she was crying because she didn't understand why Mom and Dad weren't coming back. When I was rummaging through the couch cushions for money for food. When she graduated from high school and I applauded loudest because I felt like we'd made it together. Anyway, I don't think there's any way to fix things with Anna. It's not like I can just overlook her betrayal and carry on as if nothing happened. Because I'm very clear about one thing. My parents haven't changed, even though I haven't seen them, and I'm likely to disappoint her again. But she's grown up now, and I won't be there for her. My homework is done. Update 2. One of my old school friends messaged me after the baby shower. We haven't spoken in a while, but she was close to Anna growing up, and she still keeps in touch. She was invited to the baby shower, and was able to tell me some of the things that happened. She told me our parents were there acting like the proudest grandparents in the world. That didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was what they were saying. Apparently, they've been telling this whole story about how I was a difficult teenager who ran away from home when I turned 18, making Anna's life difficult. That they were there for her, and that I was nothing more than a difficult person who came in and out of her life, hurting her every chance I got. It's something they can share because part of my sister's group are people she bonded with when she went to college, people I don't know. A perfect group of listeners for my parents to change the story of what they did. Only my friend and Elian knew anything about this, but it didn't help much either. Both my friend and Elian tried to say something, but my sister silenced them. Elian contacted me the morning after the baby shower. He apologized and said he didn't know they would go that far. He said he tried to intervene when he heard them talking, but Anna pulled him aside to say a few things. She told him he was making things worse and was trying to disrespect his parents by embarrassing them. They ended up arguing, and he ended up going home, leaving my sister there. My friend also left when my sister told her to shut up. It doesn't change anything in my life that these people I don't know think that about me or believe my parents, but it does hurt that my own sister does it. If the roles were reversed, I would owe everything to my sister. I wouldn't have contacted my parents about what they did, and I'd be the first to shut them up because I was so grateful. But realizing I sacrificed so many things I won't get back, is what hurts the most. Even my partner tells me this is all wearing on me, because he sees me sad, depressed, and listless. But all I can think about is that I had plans and couldn't follow through. I don't know if I would have made my life very different, but I wish I had tried. I would have gone to community college and gained some knowledge. And until now, I thought he did it for a noble reason, which is why it hurts so much. Elian said he's going to talk to Anna again. He doesn't agree with what's happening, but he also said she's completely closed off. I don't know what you expect to come out of that. And honestly, I don't expect much. I don't think it will make much of a difference. I just wish he'd have the courage to admit it out loud. And I wish he'd at least stop spitting on the years I sacrificed to ensure he had a future. I'm sorry I'm dwelling on this so much, but it's all I can think about lately. It's the thought that being good is the worst decision I could have made. If I had really been a bad sister, like I seem to be now, at least I'd have a good life. It's as if karma were attacking me instead of my parents, or that karma doesn't exist and that in life, bad people get what they don't deserve. Update 3. I wasn't planning on going. I told myself I was done after everything that happened, that I needed a mental break from it all. But then Elian texted me again, about a week after the baby shower, apologizing for how things went and saying he wanted to talk. I mostly ignored it, but I thought that after all, there couldn't be anything worse or something that would affect me more. We met at a restaurant for lunch, because it was the most convenient thing for both of us. He looked tired, and not just from the normal tiredness of expecting a baby. She told me that things with Anna had been a mess since that day, that things exploded between them after that. Apparently, Elian told her he didn't want his son to grow up watching her fight with his sister all the time, and that he wished she had handled everything differently. She then asked me if I would go to a dinner Elian's mom was hosting for some family members and close friends. Kind of like a continuation of the baby shower, but smaller and quieter. He said he thought it was time people heard the truth about how Anna was really raised. That I didn't have to go if I didn't want to, but if I did, he'd back me up. At first, I thought it was a trap. But something about the way Elian said it seemed sincere, as if he were really going to support me through all of this. My intention wasn't to go there to show Anna the truth. She knows that very well. But I needed to get things off my chest and say a few things, because everything that was happening seemed unfair to me, and I couldn't say anything more. The dinner was held at Elian's mom's house. There were about 12 of us there. Había algunos amigos de Ana, sus cuñados, y algunos amigos mayores de la familia. Mis padres ya estaban cuando leg. Mi miraron de reojo. A mitad de la cena, Elian lo mencionó. Dijo algo sobre lo orgulloso que estaba de Ana, pero que era importante reconocer como llegó hasta ahí. Luego me preguntó si me molestaría contarles a todos como fue después de que nuestros padres se fueron. Me dio el pie perfecto para que yo dijera todo lo que necesitaba sacar de dentro mío. Dije que cuando tenía 18 años, ellos se empacaron y se mudaron a otro estado sin previo aviso y dejaron a Ana conmigo. Dije que no fui a la universidad, trabajé en dos empleos y me aseguré de que él siguiera en la escuela. Fuimos a terapia. Se graduó y tuvo un futuro. Dije que nuestros padres estuvieron ausentes durante años. Seis de los cuales me convertí en mamá para ella. No hubo visitas, no hubo llamadas telefónicas, no hubo tarjetas de cumpleaños. Simplemente se fueron. La mamá de Ana, porque no la consideró mi madre y ella parece que sí, interrumpió con un comentario sobre cómo eso no era del todo cierto. Pero le dije que se colera como lo hizo durante años porque los adultos estaban hablando, y ella nunca se comportó como uno. Le dije, desaparecer de la vida de tus hijos es totalmente cierto, y no hay matices o estupideces que lo suavicen. Fue una elección, y que ahora este línea de vergüenza porque todo el mundo aquí, incluso padres como los suyos de Ana, bien la clase de basura de padres que son no es mi problema. Los padres de Elian le preguntaban a Elian si todo esto era cierto, y él decía que sí. También dije que Ana era una desagradecida, que no apreció nada de lo que hice, y que valoraba más un par de seres humanos horribles que la dejaron con solo 12 años a su hermana, que le dio todo lo que tenía y más. Padres que por cierto no tuvieron ninguna responsabilidad, ni sentimental, ni paternal, ni económica con su hija menor. Lo cual puso un poco nerviosos a mis padres. Y deberían porque estoy hablando con un abogado sobre mi caso. Ana no dijo mucho, ni siquiera a su esposo. No los defendió, pero tampoco me defendió a mí. Simplemente, mantuvo la cabeza agachada y dijo que no quería discutir sobre el pasado, y que no quería que su bebé creciera rodeado de pelis, que es lo que supuestamente sabía que haría en nuestros padres estaban cerca de ella durante la vida de su hijo. Después de eso, la cena prácticamente terminó. La gente comenzó a inventar excusas para irse temprano. La mamá de Elian me abrazó cuando me fui y me dijo que estaba feliz de que hubiera ido. Parece lo más extraño, pero fue lo más maternal que recibí en toda mi vida, y de alguien que apenas conocía. Ana apenas me miró mientras me iba, pero no me arrepiento de haber ido. Dije lo que tenía que decir, lo que quería que escuchara mi hermana, y eso es todo lo que me importa. No sé hacia donde van las cosas desde aquí. Estoy cansada. He pasado más de la mitad de mi vida tratando de mantener una relación que claramente no importa a Ana de la misma manera en que a mí me importa. Elian no ha dicho mucho desde entonces. Sé que lo que hizo y como lo hizo debe haber causado problemas en su matrimonio. Me apena por él, pero no por mi hermana. Me apena que todo esto esté causando problemas en su matrimonio, pero no me apena que ese matrimonio sea con mi hermana. Y es una mujer que se olvida de años convenientemente para sacar un provecho para ella. No estoy en la cabeza de Elian en este momento, pero debe estar pensando lo mismo. Si no hubiera hecho lo que hizo. No me hubiera dado para que las cosas sucedieran como sucedió. Edition, sí, estoy en pláticas con un abogado. Puedo presentar una demanda por pensión alimenticia atrasada. No me devolverá el tiempo perdido, pero puedo recuperar algo del dinero para toda la diferencia. Actualization 4. Ana se puso en contacto conmigo unas 2 semanas después de la cena. Al principio solo fue un mensaje de texto. Solo decía, ¿quieres que nos encontremos? Me quedé pensando en ello un rato antes de responder. Pero me di cuenta de que aceptar sería como volver a los viejos hábitos de estar disponible en cuanto ella necesitara algo. Le dije que si tenía algún problema en este momento, ella podría recurrir a sus padres. Me dijo que no era nada de eso, y que realmente tenía que decirme algo. Así que acepta encontrarme 15 minutos en Union Park cerca de Michigan Casa. También necesitaba que me devolviera algunos suéteres que le había prestado con los años. Admitió que no sabía cómo manejar todo. Que ver en vuestros padres de nuevo hizo algo en su cabeza. La hizo sentir que tal vez las cosas podrían arreglarse, aunque eso significara mentirse a sí misma sobre lo que realmente sucedió. Dijo que no esperaba que llegara tan lejos, y que para cuando se dio cuenta de lo enredado que estaba todo, no sabía cómo retroceder sin hacerla parecer la mala. Le dije que su excusa o disculpa medias no me estaba conmoviendo, que no hacía ninguna diferencia con todo lo que había hecho. Ella no discutió, tampoco se defendió. Solo dijo que sentía mucho haberme lastimado, que se había dejado atrapar tratando de construir algo nuevo sin enfrentar primero lo viejo. Dijo que tenía miedo de ser vista como débil o necesitada. Que se admite lo que nuestros padres hicieron. Eso la hacía sentirse como esa niña abandonada, dejada atrás y dependiente. Le dije que lo entendía, pero que eso no justificaba dar la espalda a la única persona que nunca así fue. Me pregunto si podíamos empezar de nuevo. Lo dije, no, eso no voy a suceder. Me demostraste que no debo confiar en las personas, y me voy a tomar mucho tiempo sanar eso. Algún día volveré a confiar en alguien, pero ese alguien estoy segura de que no serás tú. No voy a volver a ese rol en el que cargo con todo mientras los demás son las víctimas o los héroes, dependiendo del público. Luego le pedí que me diera la bolsa, donde se suponía que tenía mis cosas y me fui. El bebé nació hace unos días. No estuve en el hospital, pero Elian me envió un mensaje al día siguiente y me dijo que podía pasar esa carrera. Sigo siendo mi sobrino, pero no sé si quiero conocerlo. No quiero que eso sea una forma de ablandar para que acepte nuevamente a mi hermana. Elian lo sabe y me ha dicho que lo entendía, que solo pregunto por si quería hacerlo. También he estado hablando con él. Y él dice que todavía está con Ana, está considerando el divorcio. Hasta ahora, estaba durmiendo en la habitación de invitados, lo que explica por qué Ana me contactó. Quizás aceptar que lo que hizo estuvo mal la ayuda a reparar su relación con Elian. Yo ya he tomado mi decisión, aunque sus disculpas fueron genuinas, pero no puedo pensar por Elian. La demanda está casi lista y estamos a punto de presentarla para demandar oficialmente a mis padres. No sé cuánto pueden tardar estas cosas, pero mi plan es no volver a actualizar, al menos que suceda algo muy importante en el medio, hasta que esté complete. Actualization 5. No puedo predecir el futuro. No sé cuáles serán los números de la lotería, pero siempre estuve segura de que mis padres se irían, abandonando a mi hermana de nuevo. Sería criminal no pensarlo, cuando son la clase de padres que han sido siempre. Era la apuesta más segura. Si pudiera apostar sobre eso y ganado millions, no estaría escribiendo aquí supongo, pero en estos meses ha sucedido más que eso. He demandado y he ganado la demanda. Mis padres han tenido que pagar una suma cercana a $50,000. Y es bueno que sus vidas hayan mejorado en lo económico cuando se fueron de las nuestras, porque eso permitió que tuvieran que pagar, aunque hipotecando de nuevo su casa. Ya he estado gastando parte de ese dinero. Pero no en Las Vegas para provocar mis nuevos dones de adivinadora del futuro, sino para compensar mis años perdidos. Tengo poco más de 30 ahora, y muchos han intentado levantar mi ánimo en otras publications, diciendo que no era tan vieja para ir a la universidad. Quizás no lo soy, pero en aquel entonces si era pobre como para pagar una aunque comunitaria. Sin embargo, esta demanda, que incluía mis oportunidades perdidas por cuidar a mi hermana debido a mis padres, me ha dado una segunda oportunidad. Voy a ahorrar el resto mientras uso parte para pagar mis estudios. Espero que al terminar no solo tenga un mejor trabajo y un mejor futuro, sino suficientemente ahorrado todavía para hacer el pago inicial de una casa o apartamento. Mi hermana está divorciada, compartiendo la custodia de su hijo con Elian. I believe Elian filed for divorce a week after I last posted. I don't know what I can tell you about that. It was just a divorce, and that's it. Elian's reasons are the ones I've already told you. Fear that she might do the same to him in the future. No matter how many happy years of marriage there are for someone like my sister, the day she thinks cheating is okay and justified, she'll forget about it all. And if it's not that, it could be hundreds of other things. In any case, this decision wasn't influenced by me. We never discussed her idea of getting divorced beyond her telling me she was thinking about it, and then when she'd already made the decision to do so. And my parents ran away as soon as I filed the lawsuit. But the lawsuit doesn't go away if you move to another state. It just makes you look worse, as if you're running away from your responsibilities. They had to come back for some appointments anyway. It doesn't make up for lost time. I could be married, with a child, and having a much better life. But at the same time, I've been working through my feelings with someone, and I'm starting to see some sunshine. I feel optimistic about everything that's happened, and my prospects from now on. Now I have my future in my hands. I'm the only one who can change things, and I plan to do so. Update 6. It all started 4 years ago, when I wrote my first post. It's changed my life so much in those years. I'm even closer to the life I would have had if it weren't for my sister. I got married 4 months ago, but there are no plans for a baby yet, because I still have a few classes left to complete toward a degree at the community college I'm attending. The good news is that I now have a job related to my field of study, and with that, a better salary. So my life is heading where I always wanted it, even if it's a few years later. I still don't have a relationship with my sister or my parents, and that's how I want it. The distance between us is so great that I haven't heard from them. Not even my friend, the one who went to the original baby shower, is still in touch. I've spoken to Elian since then, and he's dating someone now. But as far as my sister is concerned, we haven't talked about her at all. For me, she's a bad memory, a nightmare, but now I'm waking up and feeling much better. My in-laws want to ruin our wedding because of the no children policy by calling everyone to cancel their flights. But they ruined theirs just because of my brother-in-law's cheating girlfriend's son. My fiancé Elijah and I have been together for 5 years and engaged for 10 months. Our wedding is only 7 weeks away, but instead of being a time to prepare for our upcoming ceremony, it's transformed into a battleground. The reason? We requested no children at our wedding. This started last month, during Sunday dinner with Elijah's parents. His mother, Abigail, started asking about seating arrangements, and I mentioned that we had already finalized everything based on our no children policy. She froze mid-bite and exchanged a glance with Elijah's father, Ezra. Ezra put down his fork and asked if we were serious about not allowing children. We both nodded. I explained that we had been clear from the beginning. It was printed on all the invitations we sent out 2 months ago. Abigail began listing reasons why this was unacceptable. She mentioned Elijah's cousin, Grace, who had a 14-month-old son. According to her, Grace had already booked flights for her entire family, including the baby, and hadn't known about our no children rule. I reiterated that this information was clearly stated on the invitation. I also explained our reasons. The venue has a large, unfenced pool, the reception would extend into the night, and alcohol would be freely available. Elijah added that we'd been to weddings where crying babies interrupted the ceremony, and we wanted to avoid that. Ezra's face turned red. He slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses jump. He told us that this wasn't acceptable, and that we should allow him to bring children to the relatives, because they aren't just any strangers, they're family. We told him that wasn't going to change, but he kept insisting. He said if we didn't allow Grace's baby to attend, he and Abigail wouldn't go to the wedding. I looked at Elijah, whose face had gone pale. We immediately excused ourselves and left without finishing dinner. During the drive back, Elijah was furious, saying he couldn't believe his parents were threatening to skip our wedding over this, that they didn't even have young children to care about this wedding policy. For context, my parents are covering most of the wedding expenses, except for the photographer and flowers, which Elijah and I are paying for ourselves. His parents haven't contributed financially despite being financially comfortable. This fact made their demands even more frustrating. Elijah and I always agreed on the no children policy. The venue is really a safety concern. An unfenced pool at a nighttime wedding with adults drinking isn't a good environment for children. But beyond safety, we simply wanted a day where we could celebrate without worrying about the little ones. It's worth mentioning that Elijah's relationship with his parents has always been strained. His older brother, Hunter, is clearly the favorite, while Elijah has been labeled the family disappointment for pursuing a career in graphic design instead of joining the family business. Since they started dating, Elijah has gotten better at dealing with his parents' constant criticism. But this situation was quickly spiraling out of control. The day after the fight, we decided to call Grace directly. Her response surprised us. She had no problem with our no children policy, and had already arranged for her mother-in-law to watch the baby during the wedding. She seemed confused when we mentioned her parents' reaction, and said she hadn't spoken to them about it. We planned to speak with Elijah's parents the next day to clear the air, or rather, to call them liars, which they were. That afternoon, Elijah received a text from his brother, Hunter. They've really messed up, and they'd better fix this. Mom and Dad are calling everyone in the family on Dad's behalf to tell them to cancel their flights and hotel reservations. They were trying to ruin our wedding in every way possible, and they were deeply invested in doing so. Elijah showed me more messages from his brother, where he clearly defended the parents who held him high, while accusing us of it being our fault that my deranged in-laws were sabotaging the wedding. I called my mom and explained everything. She listened quietly, then asked to speak to Elijah. After speaking with both of them, she offered to come with my dad to our meeting with Elijah's parents the next day. At first, I was hesitant. I've always handled my own problems. But my mom said she wanted to be there to share a few truths with that bunch of idiots. The next morning, we met at Elijah's parents' house. Abigail and Ezra acted surprised to see my parents there. Abigail tried to frame the argument as a family matter, but my mom told them to stop being jerks because since they were paying for the wedding, they were going to say something and settle this once and for all. When Elijah mentioned the situation with Grace, his parents denied making any threats about boycotting the wedding or calling relatives. My dad asked them if they were prepared to cover the cost of the ceremony, because if it was ruined, they'd have to pay for even the petals for the centerpieces. Every time Elijah or I tried to talk, his parents would interrupt with disparaging comments or change the subject. After the third interruption, my mom, who was usually in full-on war mode in the middle of the mud-covered jungle, told Abigail to shut up and listen to what her son was trying to tell her. Elijah took the opportunity to explain that we had spoken directly to Grace, who confirmed she had no problem with our policy and had already arranged childcare for the boy. Elijah's parents seemed surprised. They admitted they hadn't actually spoken to Grace about this, but assumed she'd be offended. My dad mentioned the contracts we'd signed with the vendors and hinted at possible legal consequences if they interfered with our guest list. At the end of the meeting, Elijah's parents reluctantly admitted they had overreacted. They agreed not to contact other family members about the idea of skipping the wedding and confirmed they would attend. But Ezra told them that wasn't going to be enough and they should call everyone so they wouldn't cancel their flights and get this sorted. My mother told them in the back that they wouldn't want her showing up at their house again. In the car, Elijah said it was the first time he'd ever seen his parents back down from a demand. My parents assured us they'd help in any way they could if any more problems arose. That night, we received a call from Grace. She had contacted other family members to explain the situation after hearing about the drama. According to her, most of Elijah's relatives thought his parents were being ridiculous and fully supported our decision. We agreed with Elijah that if they even tried to change anything about the wedding, no matter how small, they were out. And if his brother called again to defend them, he was out too. 7 weeks isn't a long time, but it feels like an eternity when you're waiting to see if your in-laws will make another scene. For now, there's peace, but I'm keeping my guard up. Our wedding will happen with or without his approval, and with or without his presence. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since the confrontation with Elijah's parents, and I wish I could say everything has calmed down, but that would be far from the truth. Last weekend, we attended a family barbecue at Elijah's uncle's house. Some of his extended family was there, including Grace and her husband, who had traveled to the city. Their baby was with the grandparents. At first, everything seemed fine. Abigail and Ezra were civil, even friendly with my parents, who also attended. I started to think maybe we were over the wedding drama. During dinner, Elijah's aunt mentioned our upcoming wedding, asking about the final preparations. I mentioned our last visit to the wedding venue, and how we were finalizing the menu. It was then that Abigail interrupted to announce that she had taken the liberty of making reservations for the rehearsal dinner at a larger venue that could accommodate children. We hadn't even planned to have a rehearsal dinner because the budget was already too much. Abigail went on to explain that she had invited several additional family members, most with young children, to this dinner she had organized without our knowledge or consent. When Elijah asked who would be paying for this dinner, Ezra smugly replied that they would, so they should have a say in who attended. They made it clear that this was their commitment. They would respect our wishes for the ceremony and reception, but they expected us to include the children in the rehearsal dinner they were now organizing. Everyone was watching us, waiting for our reaction, and I didn't want to cause another scene. Elijah thanked his parents for the offer, but said we would need to discuss it privately first. Abigail seemed satisfied with this response, clearly believing we would eventually agree. On the drive home, Elijah was unusually quiet. When we arrived at our apartment, he revealed that his brother, Hunter, had called him earlier that day with an unexpected confession. Apparently, Elijah's parents had never intended to call relatives to boycott the wedding. It had been Hunter's idea to send those threatening messages, hoping to pressure us into changing our minds, because he wanted to bring his new girlfriend's 4-year-old son to the wedding. I was very surprised. Hunter had deliberately escalated the situation to manipulate us, and Elijah's parents either acquiesced or allowed him to act on their behalf. Either way, they had lied to us during our confrontation. The next day, we visited my parents to discuss the rehearsal dinner situation. My dad pointed out that this might be an attempt by Elijah's parents to save face with the family. By organizing an event that included children, they could position themselves as the ones who contributed to the wedding. Plus, they made it public, both so people would know they'd paid for something, and so we couldn't say no. Elijah called his parents that night. He thanked them for the offer of a rehearsal dinner, but explained that we'd already arranged a small gathering with just members of the wedding party at our apartment. After the rehearsal, He suggested they could host a separate family dinner before or after the wedding weekend if they wanted to include extended family. Abigail didn't take this well. She accused Elijah of rejecting her olive branch, and that he was probably listening to me instead of thinking for himself. Elijah immediately stood up for me, reminding his mother that we made decisions together. The call ended with Abigail abruptly hanging up. The next day, we received an email from Ezra, copying several family members, including Hunter and Grace. In it, they announced that they would continue with their dinner as planned and hoped we would reconsider our priorities. They framed our refusal as selfishness and a lack of respect for family traditions. Grace called us immediately after receiving the email. She apologized for being caught in the middle and assured us that she supported whatever decision we made. She also mentioned something interesting. Hunter's new girlfriend, Melissa, had been pushing to be more involved in the wedding plans, apparently making comments about how she could become closer to the family because of this. Elijah drafted a response to his father's email, copying the same people. He politely but firmly clarified that, while we appreciated the gesture, we wouldn't be attending a rehearsal dinner we hadn't planned, but that they were free to have a dinner to celebrate anything else, since we wouldn't be attending. He explained that our wedding weekend was carefully planned, and we couldn't accept any last-minute changes. After sending the email, Elijah received several text messages from family members expressing their support. Even his grandmother called to say she thought his son and daughter-in-law were too stupid. The most surprising support came from Elijah's cousin, who revealed that Ezra and Abigail had pulled similar tricks at their wedding 5 years ago, trying to force him and his wife to invite distant relatives they'd never met. The cousin regretted giving in to his demands and told us to be firm, at least for his sake. Yesterday, Hunter showed up at our apartment unannounced. He wanted to speak with Elijah alone, but Elijah insisted I stay. Hunter admitted to sending the threatening messages, but claimed he was only trying to help resolve the situation. When Elijah pressed him about Melissa's involvement, Hunter said she just wanted to be there and didn't want to attend the wedding without her son. We haven't even met Melissa yet. We only knew that Hunter had responded to her invitation, stating that he would be attending with a date a while back. We told him nothing about the wedding was up for discussion, that it was going to be as planned, and that was the end of it. Hunter left. We've already decided to uninvite Hunter and my in-laws, though indirectly we'll also uninvite Melissa, even though we don't know her. Ezra and Abigail are moving forward with their rehearsal dinner, although we've made it clear we won't be attending and have already informed them they won't be attending the wedding. Several family members have reached out to us, asking for clarification about the events, as they're unsure what information is accurate. Elijah and I have decided to focus on our original plans and ignore the drama as much as possible. My parents have been incredibly supportive, handling some of the communications with vendors to reduce our stress. We've also hired a day of wedding coordinator to handle any issues that may arise during the wedding itself. My in-laws, Hunter and Melissa, can have all the dinner they want with their children. It might even be a rehearsal dinner, but not for our wedding. Update 2. With our wedding just a short drive away, the stress doesn't subside, especially when you have in-laws like mine. Last week, we did the final guest count for the wedding. Several of Elijah's relatives, who had initially confirmed their attendance, changed their responses to, "I'm sorry, I won't be attending." When Elijah called one of his cousins to ask why he wouldn't be attending anymore, he admitted that Abigail had called him, claiming that our venue had changed its policies and now required all guests to pay their own bar tab. After everything that had happened, Elijah's parents were still trying to sabotage our wedding at all costs by spreading misinformation to guests. Elijah immediately sent a message to all his relatives, clarifying that there had been no changes to the venue or details of the reception. Most responded in surprise, having believed Abigail's claims without question. Later that day, we learned that Ezra and Abigail had already moved forward with planning their rehearsal dinner, sending formal invitations to family members that included a line that read, "In celebration of Elijah and Emma's wedding." Several confused family members contacted us, asking if this was an official wedding event they were expected to attend. Elijah was furious. He called his father and demanded they stop presenting his dinner as part of our wedding celebration. After that call, Elijah was silent for almost an hour. When he finally spoke, he suggested we consider getting married in secret. I reminded him of all the people who were truly supportive, my family, our friends, and even some of his relatives who had witnessed his parents' behavior. Plus, everything was paid for. We decided to stick with our original plans, but we took extra precautions. We contacted our wedding venue and vendors to set up passwords to make changes to our arrangements. We also confirmed with our day of coordinator that only Elijah, me, or my parents were authorized to make changes on the wedding day. 2 days ago, Hunter's girlfriend, Melissa, messaged me on social media. She introduced herself and said she wanted to clear some things up, suggesting we meet for coffee. I thought, why would I want to meet with this person I don't even know? But then, I realized that what my in-laws or Hunter said is usually a lie. At the cafeteria, Melissa started by apologizing for any misunderstanding, but quickly changed the subject to explain how hurt Abigail was by our decision to exclude the children. She revealed something I hadn't known. Abigail had been planning to announce at our reception that she and Ezra would be paying for a family vacation to celebrate their 35th wedding anniversary. The vacation was supposedly scheduled for next summer and would include all family members, including the children. According to Melissa, our no-kids policy had ruined this surprise because Abigail felt it sent the wrong message about the importance of family. Now, Abigail was completely reconsidering the vacation plan. Unfortunately, the meeting wasn't about clarifying anything or making herself look good. It was another attempt to manipulate us through guilt. I thanked Melissa for sharing this information, but explained that our wedding decisions were independent of any future family reunions. I also pointed out that if Abigail really wanted to celebrate family, she could have mentioned this vacation plan to us directly instead of using it as leverage. When I told Elahila about the reunion, she wasn't surprised. She suspected her parents might have ulterior motives all along. What did surprise her was learning about this vacation plan, something her parents had never mentioned to her, despite supposedly including it in their plans. Yesterday, we received a call from someone who had attended the rehearsal dinner hosted by Elahila's parents. The rehearsal dinner for a wedding they weren't invited to was strange, to say the least. It wasn't really a rehearsal dinner. It was more of a gathering to talk about us, obviously, badly, and prepare to sabotage our wedding. Luckily, there weren't many people, and there was only one child, Melissa's son, but this person called us because they said there was free food and alcohol, so they weren't going to miss out. We spoke with wedding security and provided them with photos of Elahila's parents, her brother, and Melissa, asking them to be on the lookout for any boycott these revolutionaries might attempt. We also asked my brother to stay close to us during the reception in case any intervention was necessary. We're focusing on the final details and trying to stay positive. Update 3. It's been a month since our wedding day, and I'm finally ready to share what happened and how things are now. The morning of our wedding arrived with perfect weather, which put me in a good mood. The preparations went smoothly, and by the afternoon, I was getting dressed with my bridesmaids, while Elahila was with her groomsmen in another room. An hour before the ceremony, my mom received a call from the venue's security. Elahila's parents had arrived early, and were insisting on seeing Elahila immediately. The security guard followed our instructions to avoid any unexpected confrontations. My mom handled the situation, meeting Abigail and Ezra in the lobby. According to her, they seemed unusually calm. Abigail asked if Elahila was refusing to see them, and my mom explained that he was busy getting ready, but she would ask him if he wanted to see them or if she needed to take care of them herself. They reluctantly agreed to wait. When Elahila went to meet her parents, she brought her best friend with her as support. Ezra was the first to speak, saying they realized they might have crossed some boundaries. He stopped short of offering a full apology, but acknowledged that his behavior had caused tension. Abigail added that she didn't want to miss her son's wedding and promised there would be no further interruptions. Elahila thanked them for their half-hearted apologies, but said the planning was already finalized and no more people were allowed at the wedding. Then he told them he was busy because today was his wedding day, and left. The ceremony went perfectly. We don't know where Elahila's parents went, but as far as we're concerned, they weren't at the wedding. We also didn't hear from Hunter or his fiancée. There were no interruptions during the vows, no objections raised, just the celebration we imagined. At the reception, we arranged the seating so that Elahila's parents sat at a table with my uncle, who works as a mediator and has a calming presence. This ultimately wasn't necessary, because uninviting them solved many of our problems. A week after the wedding, we went on our honeymoon. We decided to completely turn off our phones for the 10 days we would be away, the best decision we could have made. Upon returning, we found numerous messages from family and friends saying how beautiful the wedding had been. Among the messages was a surprising one from Abigail. She began by saying she was deeply hurt by missing her son's wedding and saddened that we had been so mean to them. If only we had accepted her olive branch, this would have all been resolved more easily, and no one would have had to suffer. The message went on, but we deleted it when we realized nothing she said would help us. Hunter hasn't tried to contact us since the wedding. According to Grace, he and Melissa broke up shortly after our reception. Apparently, Hunter found out Melissa got divorced because she had cheated on her ex-husband. So Hunter was no longer interested in Melissa or the children. In other words, a huge scandal and a family ruined by a woman who wasn't even worth it. But it's my in-laws' fault, because if they had stopped him early, when Hunter had this crazy idea of trading up my wedding for a woman he barely knew, then none of this would have happened. Abigail wouldn't have been hurt, and my in-laws would have been at the wedding. Update 4. If you were wondering what happened to the family trip my in-laws had planned, this is the update you've been waiting for. My in-laws went on an anniversary trip, but they didn't pay for the family or bring any children. It was just the two of them and Hunter, oddly enough. I don't think they planned to invite many people, especially given the type of trip they took abroad. It would have cost a lot more than a wedding. I think the initial plan included Melissa and her son, but it never included us or anyone else. From what we know about that trip, my mother-in-law got sick the first day or two and spent the rest of the time vomiting in the bathroom. She only got better at the end, after seeing a doctor who told them she had food poisoning, all because she'd eaten a local dish they weren't used to. And Abigail, having a sensitive stomach, expelled everything inside her, except her sense of entitlement, because when he returned, he told everyone they shouldn't travel to that country. But taking responsibility for eating something poorly cooked, no, and not for trying strange things either, that's someone else's fault. However, that's not my entire update. My parents have decided to sue my in-laws for trying to sabotage the wedding they paid for. They're arguing that my parents had to put themselves through the stress and spend more money than planned because of my in-laws. For example, on security, and since this is a country of lawsuits, my parents think it's a good idea to continue giving him this fame while they sue someone who truly deserves it. I'm not part of this lawsuit, but Hunter tried to convince me to tell my parents not to pursue it. He came to our house and told Alea he wanted to talk to me, but my husband told him he had nothing to talk to me about, to which Hunter replied that he needed to talk to me because his wife, Zora, was causing problems for his parents. Alea pushed him out of the house and closed the door, but Hunter started kicking the garage door. It all ended with a call to the police and a lawsuit against him demanding he pay for the repairs, because it not only caused damage to the structure, but also to the mechanism that lifted it. Now I don't know what will happen to those lawsuits, but they're there, awaiting resolution. Update 5. I now have both lawsuit verdicts. My parents won a lawsuit against my in-laws for $15,000, which covers most of the wedding. I'm glad they were able to recover some of the money they invested in the wedding, and even more so that they got it back through my in-laws, which is the least they deserve. Our lawsuit against Hunter was minor, but he had to pay the $2,000 needed to fix the door. He also received 2 years of probation for his actions. He thought he was making a point with violence, but the judge chose to give him a point. My father and my wife confessed they were together before I met her when I walked in on them spending time together, but now they're offering me a crazy deal to keep the peace. I left work early because the system was down, and they said I'd be out for the rest of the day. That's a really good situation, because you have an excuse to leave work early. The news was marred by what happened next. Afterward, I picked up takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant, planning to surprise my wife with lunch. We've been married for 2 years, and a couple for much longer, so my goal was to take advantage of the free time to spend more time with her. But the moment I pulled into the driveway, my plans began to unravel. My dad's car was parked a few doors down, and he'd only brought food for 2. I knew it was his because he'd recently polished it and kept it obsessively clean. At first, I thought maybe he'd stopped by to drop something off, but the engine was off. There was no sign of him. When I walked into the house, everything was a little quieter than usual. The television was on, but the volume was barely audible. My wife wasn't in the living room. There were 2 coffee cups on the table, both half full. I went upstairs and started hearing their whispered voices, his voice and my dad's. My mind was already thinking about the scenario, but I hoped it wasn't real. I opened the door, and there they were. They weren't having sex, but it was intimate. Nice, yes, if you didn't know that was my wife, and the other person was my father. With that information, it was hard not to throw up. They were sitting close on the bed, gazing into each other's eyes, hands clasped, foreheads touching as if in a slow, tender embrace. But they weren't surprised when I opened the door. They were very calm. Instead, my dad slowly stood up and said, "We need to sit down and talk." I followed him into the dining room as if I were sleepwalking. My bag and lunch were still in my hands. My wife started. She said what she'd seen wasn't what it seemed, but that she owed me honesty. She admitted that she and my dad had known each other long before I met her. They had been friends, very close friends in her words. According to her, they shared a complicated past and had never had any real closure. I asked if they were having an affair. My dad looked me in the eye and said it was more than that. She said they had an emotional connection that never went away, and over time, they realized they were still in love. No one yelled that it was a joke and that I had fallen for it, even though I expected it. But then my wife added that they didn't mean to hurt me, and that was the worst part, because they said it in such a way as if they cared about me. My dad said this didn't have to become a disaster, that we were all adults and could come up with a mature solution. I asked what kind of solution he was suggesting, and my wife said we should consider staying legally married, but living separate lives under the same roof. That way there wouldn't be a messy divorce or a family dispute. We could keep the peace. He even presented it as a victory for everyone. I'd be free to date other people. She would eventually move out, and we could figure out how to divide things slowly, privately, without shame, without scandal, without drama, just a smooth transition. I asked if they had gone crazy, or if I was the crazy one imagining all this. My wife had the nerve to take my hand and say that she still cared deeply about me, just not in that way anymore. She said she didn't want to lose me completely, that I meant too much to her. She even said she thought we could redefine our relationship because it didn't have to be black and white. In case you didn't understand, she wanted to keep using me while she slept with other men, and if that wasn't bad enough, that man was my father. I got up and walked out the door without even grabbing my keys. I walked so far my feet hurt, but I couldn't stop because it made me think more. I ended up at a park near my office and sat on a bench. I didn't return home that night. I stayed at my friend Lucas's house and told him everything. At first, he thought I was lying, because of course you tell him all this and he replies, "I think you're joking, your father." Then he realized I wasn't joking because his face was so long, and he asked me what I was going to do. I told him I was getting a divorce, that I didn't know what this nonsense was, but that I wasn't going to be a part of any of it. But it's one thing to be determined, and quite another to be okay with it. I didn't sleep that night or the next. Maybe I'd been a fool, or maybe I just trusted the wrong people, but I wasn't going to do it anymore. On the third night, I decided I had to start moving the pieces. I called a lawyer, because whatever they thought they had, whatever they wanted to preserve, they were going to learn what real consequences were. They wanted peace within their families. I was going to give them a nasty divorce and have the family find out everything. I didn't answer their calls or texts for a week. I stayed with Lucas the whole time. Most days, I just sat on his back porch, staring at the poorly maintained yard, philosophizing about my own life and everything that had happened. I also went to work like a zombie, but then I stopped wasting time philosophizing and decided to fix his garden. It sounds silly, but the distraction alone made me feel better, and it was my way of thanking him for letting me stay there. On the 8th day, I finally responded, telling them I'd go pick up some of my things, and that I didn't want to have a conversation. I just wanted some space to get my things out, and for them to say absolutely nothing to me. That seemed to send them into panic mode, because suddenly my phone wouldn't stop ringing. My wife sent me a long text about how hurt she was that I hadn't given her a chance to explain herself. He said he understood my anger, but insisted that what they were proposing was the most compassionate option for everyone. Compassionate was the option of getting a divorce and ending their stupidity once and for all. They were deceiving me, and they wanted me to be compassionate. When I finally returned, I took Lucas with me just in case. I didn't trust myself enough to be alone in that house if my compassion ran out. My dad had a way of making me feel small, even when I wasn't doing anything wrong. And my wife, well, she had her own talent for making betrayal seem like a misunderstanding. The moment I walked through the door, it was like walking onto a stage. My wife had cleaned the entire house from top to bottom, even baking cookies to make the house smell better and have something to offer me. My dad was sitting in the chair, looking annoyed. My wife asked if we could talk, and I told her I wasn't there for a chat, just to pick up some documents and some essentials. But of course, they couldn't help it. My dad stood up and started telling me to stop behaving like that, because they had been nothing but kind to tell me things up front instead of letting me find out later. What a great father. They waited for me that day to tell me the whole truth. And if that day came later, it's not every day that the system crashes. How was he going to kill time until I arrived? He said he didn't expect to fall in love with her again, and that it had been complicated and painful for him too. He said he still wanted me in his life and hoped I would consider his proposal. His proposal was to sleep with my wife at my house, where I would be living, and that I would be okay with that. My wife intervened, talking about how this arrangement didn't have to change our legal status immediately, and that we could avoid expensive lawyers and public messes if we simply remained civil and respected each other's boundaries. He said we would live our truth, and that was something to be proud of. Lucas laughed out loud at that moment. He had tried some of my wife's cookies. Then she told me when we got back to her house, she had to do something. She wasn't going to let them do all that to you and keep all the cookies. It made me laugh for the first time in 10 days. I walked past them, grabbed the folder I needed from the office, and packed a small bag with clothes and toiletries. My wife followed me from room to room, trying to explain. She said yes, it was wrong, but that feelings weren't always convenient. She said she didn't want to lose me, that I still mattered to her. I told her she has strange ways of showing how important people are to her. I also casually mentioned, as if it were no big deal yelling, that I wasn't going to sit with them at lunch and play happy family, only for them to go have sex while I watched TV in the living room. That the very idea disgusted me, and if that happened, I'd throw up all over them, because yes, in my head, there would be lasagna for that lunch. Don't ask me why. She told me I was disgusting and an animal, but they were the animals, having sex with the couple's father and stuff like that. Although I think animals should have more common sense than them. Then I left as quickly as I could, and Lucas took the rest of the cookies and put them in his pocket. Then he dropped them off at a shelter on the way home. That night, Lucas and I went to a bar. He needed something stronger than coffee and busier than his living room. We talked about the divorce and that it was time to move things along. He asked me if I was going to tell the whole family, and the answer was yes, except that I'd been on autopilot the last few days and hadn't given it much thought. I especially had to tell my mother. When we got to her house, she had 2 new messages waiting for me. One from my wife and one from my dad. It was more nonsense that I didn't even bother to answer. Now I have to think about other things, which will distract me from all this. I have to talk to my mother about my father. Even though they're divorced, I don't know how interested they would be in knowing about this. I don't know how long this romance lasted. Update 1. I didn't block them after that night's post. I wanted to have a complete record in case I needed it later. My lawyer said it would be good to have messages from them admitting what was going on. The worst part was pretending in front of others. I hadn't told my mom yet. She and my dad divorced over a decade ago. She was finally happy with her life. The last thing I wanted was to drag her back into his mess. But the longer I stayed silent, the more it ate away at me. It all came to a head at a family dinner 2 weeks later. It was one of those informal Sunday get-togethers my aunt organized, potluck style. Half the family catching up while the kids ran and screamed. I almost skipped it, but then I thought, why should I miss out? I hadn't done anything wrong. I arrived with a store-bought cake because I didn't have the energy to cook. Everything seemed normal until I saw them. My father was already there. And sitting next to him, she was there too. I almost turned around and walked away, but I said, screw it, they're not going to have it easy. If this was the game they were playing, it was time to put things on the table. I went straight to the table, pulled out a chair across from them, and said I was surprised to see them both here. My dad smiled as if we were catching up over coffee. He said he thought it was time to be honest with the family, and that transparency would help everyone move forward. My wife just stood there, as if unsure whether she should speak, so I did it for them. I stood up, looked around, and told the whole table that I'd caught them cheating on me. I said my dad and my wife had been together behind my back for who knows how long. I said they proposed a deal. A deal where I'd remain legally married and let them pursue their relationship, while I pretended not to know anything to keep the family peace. Fortunately, my mom wasn't there that night. I'd rather have the talk with her than have her find out this way. My dad tried to intervene and say I was misrepresenting things. He said he and my wife had reconnected emotionally and hadn't meant to hurt me, but that adults should be able to handle mature relationships. I interrupted and asked, what kind of mature relationship involves sneaking around and sleeping with your son's wife? One of my uncles asked my wife if that was true. She just nodded and mumbled something about how things got complicated. Complicated is that you forgot to pay the electric bill, didn't fall on the mini father-in-law and said, we reconnected emotionally. And those were my words in front of everyone. I left after that because I knew my father had something to say. I didn't wait to see who stayed at the table with him or who left. I thought people would make their own decisions, and I wasn't going to beg them to take sides. The consequences came in waves. Some family members called and texted me that same night, saying they couldn't believe it. The family's balance is pretty good, and I don't think anyone is supporting my father's foolishness at the moment. My dad sent me another long text the next morning, saying that it was wrong of me to refer to my wife the way I did, that she was my wife, and I owed her respect. I was going to record my laughter. It was the second time in a long time I'd laughed, and sent it to him, but I didn't. My wife, for her part, sent me a shorter message. She said she was sorry things had to be this way, and she hoped I would someday understand how difficult it had been for her to choose between two people she loved. I gave my lawyer permission to get the wheels turning. He warned me it could get complicated, since we hadn't been married long and didn't have a prenuptial agreement. I told him I was ready for a fight. Deep down, though, I just wanted my name off the papers. I wanted my life back. I've already spoken to my mother, and although she was completely horrified, I think she was more horrified for me than for her. Update 2. The flying monkeys from my father and wife started arriving. My uncle, my father's brother, was defending my father. Not openly, but it's not the stance of someone who knows his brother was sleeping with his son's wife. He said his house wasn't the place for what I did, and that I disrespected him for doing that. He ended by saying he didn't want to take sides, but that I had forced him to. Since you can take sides with my father, my uncle is also sleeping with my wife. I don't want to think about it, but you have to be very invested in this for it to seem right. When the divorce papers were finally served, she tried to call me. She kept insisting. There were texts. She said she knew this was hard for me, but she hoped I could forgive her someday. They seem like a love story right now. A big, messed up, twisted, disgusting, rotten love story. At least they don't want to worry about me stopping the divorce. Now that everyone knows, I'm doing them a favor in some ways. But you know what's even worse? Staying married to that tarantula. My dad left a voicemail saying he still wanted to find a way to move forward. He said that no matter what happened, we were still family, and he refused to let this permanently separate us. I ignored the message without hearing the end of it. If my dad thinks we're going to be father and son again after this, that we're going to throw balls around in the backyard or have barbecues together, he's seriously mistaken. Update 3. I came home from work to Lucas's house and found a letter taped to the door. It was from my dad. He wrote that he didn't expect me to forgive him right away, but that he hoped we could talk like adults. He said he and my ex were considering a future together and wanted to do so with my blessing. He wrote that they would never be truly happy if they knew I was still out there, suffering, and that they needed family peace. I threw the letter in the trash after consulting with a lawyer, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. A week passed before I received another message, and this time it was from a distant cousin. She said she had met my dad and his new girlfriend at a restaurant downtown. She said they were laughing, holding hands, acting like a newlywed couple. My dad had introduced her by saying they were just grateful to be together. I don't think my cousin even knew she was my wife. She hadn't even been invited to my wedding because it was an intimate affair. That's why she wrote to me, to tell me about the extremely young girlfriend my father was dating. But now she knows. The problem is, she still hadn't told some people why we broke up. The next morning, I drafted a message. Just for the family and close friends, who told me they knew what really happened. I simply told the truth and sent it. Now it's out in the air, so to speak. Whoever needs to know will know. Update 4. It's been a month since I sent the message explaining everything. I got a month of silence from my father, as well as a month of quiet changes in my circle of friends, family, and acquaintances, which were reorganized based on what they now knew. And honestly, I didn't miss any of those who had been on my father's side. There weren't many, so it's no loss. What I did miss was my home. Not Lucas's house, for which I'm very grateful, but the house where I lived, the one I bought 5 years ago, the one I spent my weekends renovating, one project at a time, the one with the garden I planted, the patio I built, and the walls I painted with her back when I still thought love meant something permanent. When I left that night, the night they sat me down like it was a family reunion, and not a full-blown betrayal, I hadn't even packed a full suitcase. I just walked out, not trusting myself to stay calm if I spent one more minute inside that space. It was my house, bought in my name, with my money, my down payment, my everything. The only reason she was still comfortably there was because I hadn't claimed ownership. When we filed for divorce with my lawyer, I also asked him what was needed to secure the house for me. He asked me if I had any documents proving it was mine. I told him the house was purchased before the marriage. It had the mortgage, the title, and everything in my name. When we got married, she insisted on adding her name to the mailbox, not the deed, and I didn't think much of it. It seemed like a small thing to do at the time. She laughed and told me it would be a no-brainer. She sent her lawyer with questions, pleading emotional distress, saying she'd grown attached to the house and felt she was entitled to half of its value. My lawyer told her that feelings weren't what mattered here, but the legal documents were. There was no gray area, no shared ownership, nothing in her name, no payments made from her account. I was more generous than I liked, offering her 30 days to pack and move, but those are the legal requirements of my state. I told her through her lawyer that if anything in the house was missing or damaged, I would pursue it legally. She stopped worrying about the house. The house has been mine again for 2 weeks now, after this period has passed. And I'm so happy to have it back, even if it means taking it away from her and my father. It feels like a victory, even though I'm sleeping in another room and will probably sell it. But it was bought with my money, and I don't want her to continue enjoying it in any way. Update 5. The divorce lasted 6 months in total, from the time we filed the papers with my lawyer until the end. But the last few months were the most peaceful part of the whole mess. And when I finally had those papers in my hands, sealed, stamped, official, I sat in my car, in my driveway, and stared at them. 2 years of lies, 12 pages of rubbish. At least I've been able to keep many things from my marriage, including my money. And even though she hasn't worked, it's not my responsibility to compensate her for that. I don't think any judge could order spousal support for a wife like her. Now the house is for sale, and I'm going to move somewhere else as soon as I can sell it. I don't think living with the ghosts of my ex-wife and my father is the best thing for my sanity. I still don't hear much about my father and ex-wife, but I don't want to either, unless it's them getting some karma. If someone says they went on vacation to Hawaii, and a shark ripped out what was underneath them, then spit it out in front of my ex-wife because it tasted awful, I want to hear that. Well, maybe not all the details, of course. But if someone comes along and says they found them holding hands, I couldn't be less interested. Just to be clear, things about sharks, crocodiles, birds that have mistaken a worm, or bears with sharp claws, yes, romantic stuff, nothing. My mother said she's been thinking about this, and she says if my ex-wife had an affair with my father when they were married, it must have been more than 10 years ago. Which I thought too, but dismissed because my ex-wife would have been 15 at the time. I still don't know where my father knew her from before he met me, but that's about to change. I plan to find out. I'm being petty at this point, because if she was a minor, well, maybe there's something legal to do. What I do know is that there isn't much room for maneuver for them. I knew my ex when she was 20, so we're entering into a winding terrain if he knew her much earlier. You know, people say a lot, but it's actually a few months, and others say a lot, and it's 5 years. Update 6. I can now say what happened between my father and my ex-wife, at least in general terms. They met on a dating app when she was 18. There's a lot I don't know about it, because from what they've said, this app has an age filter. However, my father had to have set the bar at 18, and my ex-wife at my father's age to meet. Am I the only one who finds this disturbing? In any case, there was no age restriction. That relationship lasted about a year, until I met my wife through a mutual friend. A mutual friend just gave me this information. They also told me they reconnected a few months before telling me. My ex's excuse is that they tried hard not to for years, but his feelings were stronger. No one thought to tell me about their relationship when we started. I haven't been able to get my father's version of events, but I don't think it differs too much. I don't want to talk to him to find out. This alone is enough for me. Update 7. Now I don't know what's true and what's false, which is why I waited to do this update, so I could have all the details. Still, I still have my doubts. I think my friend, the one we had in common, told me the truth, but I don't think my ex told him the truth. This is what happened with my father. My father started a relationship with another woman at 21, but he also forgot to tell my ex, with whom he still had a love affair, butterflies, and fairies. Is he also in love with the 21-year-old? My ex found out, and when she did, she reported him because their relationship had begun when she was 17. I don't really know how they met, but that's the point. My father was doing something illegal because the age of consent in the state is 18. My father was going to get into a lot of legal trouble. In this state, there are sentences of up to 20 years. But my ex backed out at the last minute and said he was lying. By then, though, she'd already ruined my father's entire reputation, if he had any left. She made his new girlfriend leave him, got him fired from his job, and even my uncle, the same idiot who defended him, wouldn't speak to him. Plus, my ex also received a fine and community service for the false accusation. So I don't know what the truth is, if it was out of spite, and how they cheated on her. She lied. My ex-wife has ended up pretty badly after the divorce, because she hasn't gotten anything from me. For some reason, she wanted to end the marriage peacefully, so that I would leave her something, and she hasn't been well mentally since the divorce. Or maybe it was true, but she didn't want her lover to suffer and regretted it. But my father didn't regret breaking up with her after she ruined his life. There won't be a reconnection for a few years. I've always said I wanted to know things about my dad and my ex that had to do with sharks and other dangerous animals. But aren't lawyers considered sharks? So I guess this counts. And just as a side note, if I don't post again, my uncle has been trying to flirt with my ex. Now many things are understood. He also wanted to live with my father and date women younger than him. If possible, they should be within the family for greater pleasure. I can't say I was angry. I've cut my uncle off since it all began, and if my ex likes to be passed around between brothers, that's her problem. I know she's rejected him, but you never know with my ex. It would be nice if that happened, and then she'd file a complaint against him like she did with my father. Tell me what you think about all this. What are your theories? Every time I think about it, I have a new one, but I also try to avoid thinking about it. My father and stepmother lived rent-free in the house I inherited, but when they believed they had rights to it, I evicted them with the police within hours. Last week, I had to call the police to remove my own father from a house I own. That's how it all began. When I was 15, my dad remarried. My stepmother, Margaret, tried too hard to be my new mom. She was always around, asking about my day, my friends, and my hobbies. He bought me clothes I never asked for and decorated my room without my permission. I later found out this was because he barely spoke to his own daughter about his previous marriage, which is saying something. My dad just stood there, watching this happen. He never intervened when I told him I needed space. After 3 months of this, I couldn't stand it anymore. I asked my grandfather, my dad's father, if I could move in with him. Grandpa Murphy had a large house with plenty of space, and he agreed immediately. He was a retired judge, and had always been the most sensible person in our family. I suppose his profession gives him those powers. My dad didn't put up much of a fight. He seemed relieved that there were no tensions in his new marriage. Living with Grandpa Murphy was great. He gave me space when I needed it, but was always available when I wanted to talk. He taught me about finance, property management, and the law. These lessons proved incredibly valuable later. When I was 17, Grandpa Murphy suffered a heart attack and passed away unexpectedly. In his will, he left me his entire inheritance, including the house we lived in together, 2 rental properties downtown, and a considerable sum of money. I had no idea he planned to leave me everything, but now I understand why he taught me about all those things. My dad was furious. He claimed that he should have inherited the property, since he was his grandfather's son. But his grandfather's will was irrefutable. He had even recorded a video explaining his decisions. In it, he said he was leaving everything to me because he believed I would be responsible, unlike my father, who had borrowed and lost large sums of money over the years. This is where things got weird. Instead of me moving back in with my dad and stepmother, they decided to move into the house I had inherited. They claimed their house was too small, even though I'd lived there before. And since I now had this big house, it made sense for them to move. I was still 17, so I didn't have much say in the matter. However, I set 2 clear conditions. They were not to enter my bedroom or my grandfather's office. Those rooms contained personal belongings that I wanted to keep as they were. The house had 4 bedrooms in total, so they still had plenty of space for themselves and a guest room. When I turned 18, I went to college in another state. I continued to allow my dad and stepmother to live in my house rent-free. I only returned during vacations and some weekends, which suited me fine. I paid all the property taxes and maintenance costs. I never asked them for a single cent. Then, when I finished my studies, I moved to an apartment closer to the center. I thought they were house sitting for me. This arrangement worked for 6 years, until last month. I got a call from my dad while I was at work. He told me I should clean my room because they were going to convert it into a nursery. I was confused and asked him why they needed a nursery. She explained that my stepmother had reconnected with her daughter, Lisa, who was pregnant and homeless. They had invited Lisa to move into my house. I reminded her that they were guests in my home and had no authority to make those decisions. He argued that my room was the only one suitable for a nursery because the guest room was too small. I pointed out that they could have asked me before inviting someone else to live there, especially since Lisa could have used the guest room until they found another solution. My dad raised his voice and said I was selfish because I didn't live there anymore and could have been more generous. I reminded him that Lisa couldn't be my family because I'd never met her. Then I firmly told him not to touch my room or my grandfather's office, or I'd evict them. I suggested they move back into their house if they needed more space. I think I was pretty clear. My dad was silent for a moment before saying they had sold their house years ago. That same afternoon, my Uncle Jack, my dad's brother, called me. My Uncle Jack and my dad hadn't spoken in years due to a business disagreement, and he hadn't been around much of my life because of it. He told me my dad had called him complaining about my threat to evict them, which I thought was odd. My Uncle Jack suggested I reconsider and not kick my dad out. I told him I'd think about it, but I'd already made my decision. The next day, I called my lawyer. She had been Grandpa Murphy's lawyer and had helped me manage the property since I inherited it. I asked her to accompany me to the house so I could formally serve the eviction notice on my father and stepmother. My lawyer agreed and suggested we go early in the morning to avoid a scene. We arrived at the house at 7 a.m. the next day. I tried to open the door, but my key didn't work. My dad had changed the locks. I knocked loudly until my dad answered. He spoke through the closed door, saying he wouldn't let me in until I changed my mind about the nursery. I told him I had come with my lawyer to handle this properly, but if he didn't let me in, I'd do it my way. He still refused. My lawyer and I went straight to the police station. As we were walking to the police station, my Uncle Jack called me again. This time, his tone was different. He told me my dad had called him again, asking him to convince me to step back. My Uncle Jack told me he was tired of my dad's manipulative behavior and would support whatever decision I made. At the police station, Donna explained the situation. Since she had all the documentation proving I was the owner of the house, the police agreed to escort us back. When we arrived, the officers informed my dad that he had to allow me access and that they were being evicted for changing the locks without permission and denying me access as the owner. My dad tried to make himself look like a poor victim when he said he had nowhere else to go. He claimed they had lived there for years and that they had rights. He even tried to claim that Grandpa Murphy had verbally promised him the house. The officers asked him if he had any documentation to back up his claims. He didn't. The officers explained that, as the legal owner, I had the right to evict them, especially since there was no formal lease. I hired a moving truck to help them move, but I did so in my father's name. They only had their bedroom furniture and personal belongings to move, as most of the house's contents belonged to me or Grandpa Murphy. My stepmother cried the entire time, while my dad kept telling the officers that this was all a misunderstanding. Lisa stayed in the background, looking uncomfortable. I noticed her pregnancy was barely visible. After they left, I immediately called a locksmith to change the locks again. I also installed security cameras around the property. I thought this would be the end of it, but I was wrong. A month later, I was out of town for work. My girlfriend, Ellie, was staying home to watch her. My dad showed up unannounced. When he saw Ellie, he thought we'd moved in. He told Ellie that since we were living comfortably in the house, we should welcome him, Margaret, and Lisa for next Christmas. He gave her a list of meals he hoped we'd prepare and gifts they wanted. Ellie told him to leave immediately, or she'd call the police. He left, but not before telling him I was an ungrateful son and that I'd regret treating him that way. I thought that would be the end of it, but 2 weeks later my dad called my mom. They hadn't spoken since their divorce 16 years ago. He invited her to spend the holidays with his family at my house. My mom declined, and instead offered to take me and Ellie on a trip to Italy for the holidays. When my dad found out about this, he called me demanding that my mom pay for him, Margaret, and Lisa so they could go to Italy too. When I refused, he came to my house again, insisting that either my mom include them, or Ellie and I should pay for their trip. His behavior was so ridiculous that Ellie and I laughed until he left. I've since changed my phone number. I've also given my tenants at my other properties a photo of my dad, and instructed them not to let him in under any circumstances. I hope this is finally the end of his sense of entitlement, but knowing my dad, I doubt it. Update 1: after my last post, things went quiet for a while. My dad didn't try to contact me again, and I started to think maybe he'd finally gotten the message. Ellie and I continued with our plans to spend the holidays in Italy with my mom. Before we left, I asked 2 friends who lived nearby to check on the house periodically. They reported that there was no sign of my dad and no disturbances. Italy was amazing, and I have to thank it for that. We had a private tour of the Vatican, ate at amazing restaurants, and stayed in beautiful hotels. Ellie and I even discussed the possibility of moving to Europe one day. It was the most relaxed I'd felt in months. Then, on December 28th, while we were having breakfast at our hotel in Rome, I received a call from my Uncle Jack. He sounded frantic. He told me he was moving out of state immediately, and needed to sell his house as quickly as possible. He didn't explain why he was in such a hurry, but he asked if I was interested in buying it. His house held special meaning for our family. In fact, it was my great-grandparents' house, where Grandpa Murphy grew up. Grandpa had given it to my Uncle Jack years before, but he later told me he regretted the decision before he died. Grandpa asked me to try to get the house back someday, and if I succeeded, to give it to my cousin Maria. Maria is my Uncle Jack's daughter from his first marriage. My Uncle Jack never acknowledged her as his daughter and refused to pay child support. Maria lived with her mother in another country, where she was born, and always struggled financially. Grandpa Murphy had kept in touch with Maria and helped her whenever he could. He wanted her to have the family home as a way to make up for the way my Uncle Jack had treated her. My Uncle Jack had no idea that I knew about Maria or was in contact with her. If he had known, he probably wouldn't have offered to sell me the house. I decided to use his desperation to my advantage. I offered him 75% of the house's market value, paid in 3 installments. He rejected the offer, saying it was too low and that he wouldn't be returning to the city. I countered with a better offer, the same amount, but paid in full upon my return from Italy on January 3rd. I also offered to cover all legal fees and moving expenses. All I had to do was have my things packed and the documents ready when I returned. To my surprise, he agreed immediately. He and I shortened our trip by 2 days and flew back. The transaction went smoothly. I paid my Uncle Jack. He signed for the house and left town the same day with his new wife. The next morning, I called Maria and told her to come to the United States as soon as possible because there was something important Grandpa Murphy had left for her. She arrived 3 days later, and I gave her the keys to the house along with some money to help her settle in. Maria needed to stay for several days to handle the property transfer process and apply for a visa that would allow her to move permanently. During this time, she stayed with him and me. One night, while we were having dinner at home, my dad showed up again. It turned out that my Uncle Jack had been planning to sell the house to my dad. My dad had asked for a few days to raise the money, and was furious when he learned I had bought it instead. My Uncle Jack, wanting to avoid a confrontation with my dad, simply told him I had bought the property and left town. My dad assumed I had bought it for myself and decided to claim it. When no one answered his knock on the door of my Uncle Jack's old house, he broke a window and let himself in. What I didn't know was that the house had a doorbell camera that Maria had installed. We saw the break-in on Maria's phone and called the police immediately. Since the break-in was taking place in an upscale neighborhood, the police responded quickly. They arrived at the house and found my dad inside, searching through closets and drawers. He was surprised when the police told him the house belonged to Maria, not me. They arrested him for breaking and entering. With the help of my lawyer, Maria filed charges against my father. Due to his previous behavior at my house, changing the locks and refusing to let me in as the legal owner, the judge denied bail. He is currently in jail awaiting trial and could face several months in prison. After my dad was arrested, I investigated to find out why my Uncle Jack had been in such a hurry to leave town. It turns out he had borrowed a significant amount of money from his wife's brother for a business that failed miserably. When he couldn't repay the loan, his brother-in-law threatened him with legal action. My Uncle Jack decided to sell everything and skip town rather than face the consequences. I texted my uncle to let him know that if he ever tried to contact my dad or cause any trouble for Maria, I would tell his wife's family where he was. He responded by blocking my number, which was fine with me. I don't expect we'll hear from him again. Maria is considering keeping the house and moving permanently to the United States, although she doesn't know the legal paths to doing so. He's here now on a tourist visa, but since he was born outside the country, he has the option to apply for citizenship, but it's not automatic. Update 2. My dad's trial was last week. He was sentenced to 6 months in prison for breaking and entering, plus an additional 3 months for the incident at my house, when he changed the locks and denied me access. The judge was particularly harsh because my father showed no remorse during the trial. He maintained that, as my father, he had every right to enter the property that he believed should have been his from the beginning. My stepmother, Margaret, approached me outside the courthouse after the sentencing. This was the first time we spoke since the eviction. He told me that Lisa had moved out a few weeks ago after they were evicted. Apparently, Lisa wasn't actually pregnant. She'd lied about it to get sympathy and a place to stay. I should feel bad because when I saw her, I thought it was showing, even a little. Margaret and my dad had been living in a motel since the eviction, and their savings were almost gone. Margaret asked me if I would consider letting them move into one of my houses once my dad was released from prison. She promised they would pay rent and respect my boundaries. I told her I now had tenants in all my properties and that there were no vacancies. Besides, he wasn't that crazy. Although that wasn't entirely true either. He had an empty rental unit, but he had no intention of letting them live there. Margaret started crying and asked if I could at least give them some money to help them get back on their feet. I walked away without responding. The next day, I received multiple calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. My dad somehow managed to call them from jail and told them I'd made them homeless out of spite. Most of these relatives didn't know the whole story and quickly judged me. I blocked their numbers one by one. One call I answered was from my grandmother, my mother's mother. She had received a letter from my father demanding money. In the letter, my father said I had stolen his inheritance and left him destitute. My grandmother wanted to hear my side of the story. I explained everything that had happened, including the fact that my dad and Margaret had lived rent-free in my house for 6 years. My grandmother told me I was right to send him to jail then. Maria moved into my Uncle Jack's old house last month. She's adjusting well to life in the United States and has already made some friends in the neighborhood. She invited Ellie and me over for dinner to thank us for helping her. During the evening, he showed us some old family photos and documents he had found in the attic. Among them was a letter from Grandpa Murphy to my Uncle Jack, written just a few months before Grandpa died. In the letter, Grandpa expressed his disappointment in both sons and explained why he planned to leave his inheritance to me instead. It mentioned that my dad had borrowed more than $100,000 over the years and had never returned a cent. It also wrote that my Uncle Jack had stolen money from Grandpa's business when he worked there briefly in his 20s. The letter made it clear that Grandpa believed neither of his two sons was financially responsible. Maria gave me the letter, saying I should keep it in case my dad tried to contest Grandpa's will again in the future. I didn't tell her that I had already found similar letters in Grandpa's office years before. Grandpa had been very thorough in documenting his reasons for decisions about his estate. Last week, Ellie and I went to see the empty rental property I mentioned earlier. It's a small house that needs some renovations before it can be rented out again. While we were there, we discovered someone had been living in the house without permission. There was a sleeping bag in one of the rooms, along with food wrappers and dirty clothes. The lock on the back door was broken. I called the police, who arrived and searched the property. They didn't find anyone at the time, but they took a break-in report. That night, they called me to inform me they'd caught someone trying to break into the house. It was my stepmother's daughter, Lisa. She admitted she'd been living there for several weeks after running out of money for a motel room. She'd gotten my dad's address before he went to jail. I decided not to press charges against Lisa, on the condition that she leave town and never contact me or my family again. She agreed and left the next day on a bus to another state. I hired a security company to install better locks and an alarm system in all my rental properties. Update 3: My dad was released from jail last week. I found out because Margaret called to inform me. She said my dad wanted to meet with me to clear the air and start over. I turned her down. He then mentioned that they were still struggling financially and asked again if I could help them. I told him that 6 years of free housing was all the help they'd get from me. 2 days after his release, my dad showed up at my workplace. He walked straight through reception and found me in the conference room during a client meeting. He made a scene, talking loudly about all the problems of the last few days. Security had to escort him out of the building. My boss was understanding, but suggested I work from home for a while in case my dad returned. That same day, I filed for a restraining order against him. The judge granted the order based on my dad's behavior after his release from jail. The order prohibits her from coming within 150 meters of me, my home, or my workplace. Maria has settled completely into her new home. She's found a good job at a local company and has made friends in the neighborhood. He invited Eli and me to his housewarming party last month. The house looks completely different. He's renovated it beautifully, keeping some of the original features that meant so much to Grandpa Murphy. Eli moved in with me permanently, and we're considering buying a house in a different neighborhood. Although I love Grandpa's house, it now holds too many negative memories. We're looking for properties closer to downtown, where we both work. I plan to keep Grandpa's house as a rental property. It's in a desirable area and should generate good income. As for my other properties, they're all rented out to reliable tenants now. I raised the rent slightly to cover the cost of the new security systems, but I'm still keeping it below market value. Several of my tenants are friends or colleagues who needed affordable housing, and I'm happy to help them. My Uncle Jack tried to contact Maria a few months ago. He claimed he wanted to reconnect with his daughter and make amends for the past. Maria didn't respond to his messages. Later, she learned through a mutual acquaintance that my Uncle Jack was in financial trouble again and was probably looking for a place to stay. Maria changed her phone number as a precaution. My mom suggested I speak with a financial advisor about setting up a trust for my properties. This would provide an additional layer of protection should my dad ever try to claim any of them. I met with an advisor last week and am in the process of setting up the trust. Grandpa Murphy would have approved this step. He always emphasized the importance of protecting assets. Margaret filed for divorce from my dad last month. She contacted me to inform me not to make any demands. She apologized for her role in everything that happened and said she realized how toxic my dad could be. I didn't respond to her message. While I don't wish her ill, I no longer want any connection to that part of my life. The holidays are approaching again, and this year, Ellie and I are hosting Thanksgiving at our house. We've invited my mom, Maria, and some close friends. It will be the first party in years that I'm truly looking forward to. I began this journey when I was 15, seeking refuge with my grandfather. Now, at 25, I've built a life I'm proud of, surrounded by people I choose to have by my side. Update 4: You may not recall that in my update 1 to 2, which I also don't remember where, I told my uncle that if he started bothering me again, I would tell him where the people I owed money were. I didn't even know exactly where he'd moved, but I knew exactly who I could ask to find out. Sorry, I'm not going to say who because that would be like shooting myself in the foot. That's what I did, and it got him in trouble. There are reasons why the brother-in-law didn't try to contact his sister or my uncle after what happened. First, because he wanted to forgive his sister for this. Apparently, his brother-in-law has money, and it wasn't a huge amount he lent him, at least not by his standards. But he also knew that tracking him down and suing him wouldn't do much because he thought he was bankrupt. But giving him the information seems to have stirred his desire to do something for him, because he went to see him in person and show my uncle his fist in his face. I don't feel sorry for him. I warned him. He also told his sister that if she chose to stay with him, she would be in a lot of trouble. Not even his wife knew much about my uncle. She didn't know the house belonged to him. She thought I was renting it to him or giving it away for free, like I had my father. She also didn't know I had bought it from him. Now the brother is suing to recover the money. Because, although any business can go wrong, my uncle didn't use the money for what he said he would. My uncle tried to sue him for his assault, but nothing worked. The case was dismissed, although I don't know the exact details. Now I don't know if my uncle's wife already knows the whole story or not. Maybe she did, and never decided to tell her brother. But with everything that's happening, it would be difficult for her to continue living in the dark. Oddly enough, I haven't had any contact with my father since. As for him and me, we found an apartment near downtown, better than the one I lived in before, and we've moved in together. I've already read your comments about signing a prenuptial agreement for my property and everything my Grandpa Murphy left behind, but it's still too early for that. We're not talking about Goddard. Plus, it's something the lawyer herself suggested. Not to mention my grandfather, who has prepared me for all these legal matters. Update 5. I still haven't heard from my father in all this time. I don't think I should be worried, but I'm just mentioning it for those who keep asking about him. No, this update is to talk about my uncle's divorce and also the lawsuit. The two things that have primarily taken the money he got from his house. I think it's fair, because in the end, he didn't get anything from something that belonged to Maria in the first place. I'm glad I was part of the Karma team and helped. For starters, his wife's brother won the lawsuit and recovered his money, plus other expenses, interest, and attorney's fees. While I know his wife divorced him, but who knows why? There are so many things she could have divorced him for. We could assume it's because of all this that happened, things he hid, either because she found him with another woman, and we're assuming wrong. Or maybe my uncle went bald. I haven't seen him in a while, and that made me unbearable. Maybe we'll never know. So that's all I have to tell you guys right now.